Is he dead after living the past 15 years with no talent or skills? Putting in all that effort just to get food, only to be killed by a truck at 30. A girl looked down at him anxiously and called him Jink. That is not his name. He has a different name. Opening his eyes, he saw a strange woman with a distressed face in front of him, who said she was glad Mr. Jink had finally woken up. The girl told him he had suddenly fallen before His Royal Majesty. His Royal Highness dismissed the convoy and ordered it deported. She said she was very worried and her heart was breaking. Sato stopped her. The whole thing went wrong. Confused by the D-Zinc story, he asked the girl who he was and where he was, and she was horrified and wanted to call a doctor. Sidet stopped her and told her not to. His name is D-Zinc Nonland, the 14-year-old heir to the Duke of Nonland. He appears to have been part of His Majesty's convoy and has lived in the Rosalto Kingdom since childhood. Today, His Royal Highness ordered his expulsion from the kingdom because the Non-Land House has been known for generations as elite spearmen, and he was poor at Sujutsu. As a result, he started behaving badly, so it's no surprise His Majesty disliked him. In any case, it appears he was reborn as this boy. For some reason, he remembered every detail of Sato Jimkuro's life, and now those memories were in his own head. He had once read that rebirth into another world was possible, and these memories proved it. A girl named Elsa told him he had fallen. Today, the master is acting well. Sato concluded that Jinkuro's personality was still overpowering. Jing asked Elsa if he was really being deported. The maid confirmed and added that after His Royal Majesty dismissed the convoy, he was ordered to leave the kingdom. It was decided that Esther would be heir. Mr. Jinko was stripped of his aristocratic status and ordered to leave the kingdom within a month. After that, Elsa covered her face with her hands and began to cry. Feeling sorry for this boy, she saw that Dzink realized old Nonland knew he was being deported, and leaving the capital meant facing monsters, which amounted to a death sentence. Even after being reborn, nothing changed in him. His life was just as worthless. Jink decided to change his clothes and offered to help him do the same. Suddenly, a floating screen appeared in front of Jinx, announcing that Elsa was a level 18 professional servant. I couldn't understand what was going on. It looked like a spreadsheet of computer game statistics, so D-Zinc asked Elsa about it. The girl didn't understand and thought something was wrong with her face, so the screen was invisible to her. Only Zinc could see him. It was amazing. Zinc could see a screen hanging in the air with information about how Elsa was made. A list of her skills appeared, and Jink realized he had an extraordinary, very rare ability in this world, owning a demonic eye that felt unreal. Dazing tried to check his stats, but nothing had appeared on the screen yet. Focusing, the young man decided that since he would use this ability often, it needed solid training, remembering that in earlier games you didn't even have to work hard to do it. At last he could see his stats: level 9, no profession, and skills at level 1 listed as jutsu. Physical strength level 25, assessment level 6, courtesy level 3, plus a vault and a non-land drop bonus. The skill list showed both martial arts and magic. Jinko was pleased to start at level 9. His spear proficiency was only level 1, which explained why things had turned out this way. Everything was ranked, with his swordsmanship at S level, while his sujutsu and cane handling were only F. Fire magic, B. Water magic, S. Air magic, B. Earth magic, A. Alchemy, A. And healing, S. DZNK realized that evaluation lets him see statistics, and that he had an S-level enchantment skill which he could not believe. It couldn't be happening. Jink knew only 3 other people had this ability, and when Elsa asked what was wrong, he was so happy he forgot she was there, thrilled that only 4 people in the world would have this power, which would let him strengthen items, and he felt glad to be alive. At that moment, Esther came to Zink. Requesting to enter the room, he said things were not as good as he had thought. Nothing could be done about it, so he brought some money and a spear to help him. Mr. was Jing's younger brother and one of the few in the house who really understood him. Jing thanked him for the spear. Although he was unlikely to use it because he lacked the talent, he told Esther about the money. Link asked him to buy something for him. City merchants won't deal with him now that he's lost his aristocratic title. It was best for his younger brother to do the shopping. The brother agreed to the task, and Jink asked him to use the money to buy everything on a list Jink would give later. The next day, Esther ran her older brother's errand and collected everything on his list. He noticed the large number of servants Esther had at her disposal, which was normal since she was the future celebrity of the non-land house. The younger brother told Jinku it would be difficult for him to carry all these things alone. Jink replied that he knew. He said he would tell him something once the remaining items were delivered here. When the remaining things were delivered, Dzink told Esther he would soon leave this country and have no one with him. Even though his father had sent him away, it still has a storage ability, and Dzink asked his brother not to tell anyone about it. He only found out about it recently, and he can throw everything in here. Esther was very surprised and wanted to see what was inside this vault. He is ink-allowed. Esther looked around the magic vault and was surprised by how large it was. He said his brother was doing great. Jink then checked Esther's status. His level was 11. A storage unit was also registered to him, but he didn't seem to know about it. The older brother noticed that Esther's status says nothing about her ability to evaluate. Then he turned to Esther and asked her for a small bottle of her own blood. My brother asked me whether he really wanted to sign a contract. Link confirmed his guess and said he didn't have to if he didn't want to. However, Esther said he would gladly do it if his brother wanted it. Jink thanked his brother and asked him to show where the Adventurers Guild was so he could register there. Esther gladly helped his brother with everything. His brother said it was very easy. When the two brothers walked down the city street, the passers-by called after them with insults and recognized them. They knew that Dzink Nonland was being deported from the country. Many gloated. Jink told his brother he understood everything, but he did not like it. Esther asked his brother not to listen to the crowd. Jink sided with him. Everyone in the city believed that Dzink was deported because of a mediocre aristocrat's actions. Jin had heard the gossip and realized the person he had transmigrated into was very powerful and treated the commoners badly. Nanny Elsa has cared for him since he was a child, so you can understand her. But even if you look back over his whole life, it is impossible to understand why Esther would miss such a brother. Jink and Esther arrived at the building where the Adventurers Guild was located. The brisk receptionist behind the counter told them to put a drop of blood on their guild cards to become G-ranked adventurers. She then asked the young men if they wanted to end with a short description of the guild. The registration process had a lot of red tape, but Dzink decided to listen to her. She said adventurers can earn ranks from G to SS. Newcomers start at G, but if he rejoins, he will not get the same rank as before. For example, if you stop participating in guild life for about a month, he will earn fewer points. He didn't realize the receptionist was speaking so quickly and unclearly because she wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. That evening, Jink warmed up by practicing with his sword before dinner. From the stats, he's better at swordsmanship than Sujutsu. It has an S class. We figured that if he had known his stats sooner, his life would have been different. Jink swung his sword with ease. Practicing his blows on a special dummy, he was surprised at how light the 14-year-old's body felt. After finishing training, he realized his only parting gift for Esther was his skill in alchemy and enchantment. He planned something to do with Esther's blood, and he had to do it well for his brother's sake. The dining room of the Nonland mansion was ready for dinner. At the head of the table sat Gordon Nonland, the father of D's Incorporated. The old man turned to him and said this was his last meal here, and that he would have to leave tomorrow morning. Dzink said he already knew that. My father asked whether he had ever been a swordsman. The son said he had and asked what the problem was. Old Nonland remained silent, and Dzink said he would prepare to leave tomorrow morning. In his room, the young man checked the equipment stats to make sure they matched his level. His enchantment was at level 3. Each clothing item granted 3 power points: adventurer's clothing, trousers, right boot, left boot, Korra's right and left adventurer's gloves, glasses, and cloak. He ended up with 27 points. Now, he has 25 points of physical strength. Jink estimated that wearing all of them would bring his physical strength to 52 points. He wondered how well it would work and assumed tomorrow would be fun. After drinking the mono potion, he thought again about a gift for Esther and figured something from the blacksmith shop might suit him, since he had already sold all the household goods. The spear his grandfather gave him was made of mithril, was exchanged for a gold bar, and its hilt was paid for with extra funds. Mester accompanied his brother to the west gate of Ruth's royal capital. He told Jinku that now he would have to go on alone. Among the few mourners was Elsa, who tell Jinka to be careful. He thanked everyone for taking part. He turned to Esther and thanked her for her invaluable help. He also gave his younger brother a gift, a map and an elegant box. He told me to put a drop of blood on the map later and to open the box after he had left the country, saying these were things he should definitely do. The young man then said goodbye and left the city. Mr. shouted after his brother to tell him to take care of himself and hoped that everything would be all right with him. On a journey in Quentin, he stopped after a while and looked out over the scenic area, with mountains rising in the distance. This marked his true beginning. The young man pulled out a map and studied his route. First, he must walk for 2 days to the border post called City of Rio, passing through the Birch area. Crossing the Mobet's brand will take another 4 days on foot. Normally, he would have had to spend the night somewhere on the way to Rio. Right now, it's too dangerous for him to be alone. It was unclear how far his physical strength and enchantment could carry him. He moved very fast. Things turned out better than he expected, and with this skill he will reach his destination by the end of today. After an hour of swift movement, Zink stopped. Jink had been running non-stop but wasn't tired at all because of his enchantment skill. He suddenly came upon a wrecked wagon train with bodies scattered around. At first he was afraid, but he told himself to calm down and decided he would also have to enchant his mind. It was a disgusting sight. At that moment, goblins appeared and told the guests they had killed the merchants. D's Ink drew his sword and entered the fight, and his skill showed the goblin's physical strength was at level 8. If he was not careful, he would also end up dead. The young man swung his sword from right to left. Zailing landed crushing blows on the monsters. His body moved before he could think. That showed the power of enchantment. The monsters were defeated. Sitting on the grass, Jinx checked his status in the floating information window and felt he had chosen a smart way to level up. Being deported from a collapsed country turned out to be a good thing, and he will reach his goal through his abilities. Jink looked again at the bodies of the merchants and goblins he had killed. He could smell human and monster blood. This was normal in this world. The young man folded his arms and wished the dead to rest in peace. After that, he relaxed a bit and was ready to continue the journey. In this world, being present, even after a monster attack, is not a crime if you do not touch the bodies of these unfortunate people. More monsters will still come later and take their things, so Jink decided to take something back. Bringing a family heirloom recovered from a corpse to the guild gets you a reward and the gratitude of the deceased's family. Zink wanted to leave the country sooner. He had to get used to personally butchering the monsters. A darkly humorous proverb came to mind. The one who is not cut to pieces in the end has the last laugh. To prove that the goblin was killed by an adventurer, you extract the magic stone from the ear and the heart. You can also earn it in the guild, but learning all the monsters this way is daunting. While traveling to the city of Rio, you may encounter goblins and kobolds, although the Jinka had no trouble with them. The next morning, Jink saw his status had risen to 20. Once he had enchanted a weapon, it could not be upgraded again, so he brought many spare swords to the storage area. His enchantment reached level 8. Swordsmanship rose to level 8 as well. He stored his old sword as a spare. An hour later, he reached the woods east of the Mabitz River, where adventurers were resting. He also sat on the trunk of a fallen tree to catch his breath, but no matter how hard he tried, he didn't have time today to reach the city of Marky Mobitz, so he realized he would have to spend the night here, and then drank the Mano potion. He suddenly heard someone ask for a potion for a wounded man who was dying. An adventurer asked for a potion for his friend, but no one would give it because it was too expensive. Jink stepped forward and offered a potion, promising to give them as much as they needed. The statistics showed they were not bad people, and Jink did not want to see anyone die. After that, the wounded man was given a potion to drink. Jink had never been as badly injured as this man, and had never tried that potion on himself. He wasn't sure it would help, but the potion did, and the wounded man woke up. Though still in pain, his comrade warmly thanked Jinky for saving him. They said they were a party ranked as dragons in tiers, and were led by Alexander. Using his observation skill, he suggested Jink just call him Alec and could see Alexander was a level 72 adventure swordsman, rank B. His title was Big Brother. Alec pulled out a large bag of money and handed it to Jink. Said it was all the money they had. He thinks it will just pay for the potion. Zink wanted to know what had happened to them. Alex said they were lucky to meet a red ogre. The red ogre was an A-rank monster. As their leader, he told the young man he had saved their comrade. He would repay him even if he had nothing left, and might even become his slave. Jink knew one bottle of the potion cost 5 gold coins. In Japanese yen, it would be 5 million. The youth saw this as financial strength and understood that slavery was allowed in this world, and why. Jink told Alec to rise from his knees, saying that keeping an old man as a slave is somehow disgusting. The resting adventurers suddenly leaped to their feet, weapons drawn, and saw a whole crowd of orcs nearby who had smelled blood and come here. Zink checked the stats and saw D-rank orcs with physical strength 29, and he decided that despite their numbers they were not a problem, while the Jinka was level 20 with physical strength 30. Alec said they'd run out of usable weapons because of the red ogre. Jink wanted to keep it hidden until he left the country. He had no choice. Jink pulled swords from his magic storage and handed them to the adventurers. Then Jink charged the orcs, slashing with his sword. The other one. The adventurers were amazed by how easily this guy defeated D-rank orcs. The adventure immediately turned into a battle. The fight reached its climax. Jay kept fighting. He thought he had to kill more of these monsters to gain more experience points, so he couldn't afford to give in to these adventures. Fate led Jinka into a duel with an orc general who had a B rank and 68 points of physical strength. Although the monster's rank was very high, he decided he would find a way. Malik watched, horrified and amazed as the man prepared to attack an orc general alone. Jink faced a powerful opponent. The enchantment did nothing for him. He had been too hasty to take on the monster alone. Alec rushed in to help and drew the monster's attention. The monster was now seriously threatening Alec. Desync jumped onto the monster's back and plunged his sword into its neck with all his strength. He swung his sword and cut off the monster's head, which rolled across the ground. Seeing their general die so gruesomely, the orcs retreated. Malik told Jink he was an incredible warrior. He suspected he had a high rank. The youth said he was still a 6th rank novice, then thanked Alec for helping him defeat the orc general. I was advised to keep the reward for myself as payment for the potion. Still, Jink suggested cutting it in half. The adventurers were amazed by the young adventurer's skill. The young man recognized Jink as a member of the Nanland royal family and realized the rumors of his deportation had already reached here. He claimed to be a fallen member of the non-land family and that his name was Jink. Even though he says so, he no longer an aristocrat. He proved to be different from what the adventurers had been told. Zink asked Alec what his plans were. The leader said they would go to the royal capital after finishing the escort mission. Earlier they planned to stop in Mobitsburg, but now he is his slave and will follow him anywhere. Zink advised him not to solve everything so simply, and Alex said he couldn't thank him any other way. When Jing said he planned to visit Mobitsburg too, he asked whether the person they were meant to escort was in the city, and whether he could join their party, asking Alec this when he returned to the royal capital to give his brother and Esther something not involving land, after which their slavery contract would end. That way he can learn to be an adventurer on his own. Alec was surprised and asked if that was all. Then Alec hugged the young man and told him he was a very nice guy. One of the adventure girls, holding a bow and looking at Jinka, said he was quite interesting. With the orc general defeated, Jink and the adventurers head to Mobitsburg City. They were on a road through the goblin forest, but despite the name, they had not met a single orc or goblin. At first, the forest seemed ordinary, but then they spotted many goblin archers on the high ground. To escape the forest, he had to deal with this large army of monsters, with Jing charged without hesitation. Alec warned him to be careful. The adventurers worked tirelessly with their hands and swords. D-ranked fighters joined the fight as well. Zink thought they were wasting their energy. If they do it just for experience points or money, that explains everything. Before long, the huge goblin army was finished. It was surprisingly easy. Seasoned adventurers were surprised that the frail youth fought more effectively than they did. "They're grown men," Jink said softly. "Maybe it's all about talent." D's ink weighed his status. With enchantment at level 8 and 8 points gained in the final battle, he knew he would be the best player in the world. He increased his physical strength with an enchantment. The cuirass and cloak added another 8 points. The clothing and underwear received the same addition, a glove ring. The adventurers rested. After the recent battle, they thought the newcomer was impressive. A girl stepped forward and told Jinku her name was Karen, the leader of the Sacred Flame Party. She said she was lucky to see him win yesterday, accompanied by a bowguard, a true hero who... He also introduced himself to the young man and said he had never seen anyone like him before. They all noticed he handled his weapons very well and wondered whether he was an enchanter. Will was the third member of Sacred Flame and also wanted to meet Jink. They immediately decided to check their abilities. The bulk art was an A-rated sword adventure at level 150. Karen, leader of Sacred Flame, was a 214th level elf, a healer and an S-rank archer by profession. A level 165 status granted a valuable skill called Weapon Evaluation. He told Jinku the weapon assessment was wrong because his equipment had added 8 to his physical strength. He could upgrade multiple items to the same level, so he was clearly an enchanter, and the adventurers were surprised to hear it. They knew there were no enchanters on this continent. We'll ask Jink if he is willing to sell this ability for a reasonable price. The young man said he was ready on only one condition, and you will want to know what it was. Jink said the skill owner must first drip blood onto the enchanted item and do everything correctly. The item must not be handled or defiled by people of questionable background. It is being sent to the Kingdom of Cal via Mabitsburg, and as long as he stays in this country, he will not give this ability to anyone for any reason. The mage nodded and offered a toast to that, especially since he is a stake adventurer, and told the young man they were very happy to have the enchanter in their country. Jink said he didn't know the usual price because he'd never met any other enchanters, so we can let him set his own price. Jink reported he can enchant for +8 swordsmanship, +1 sugjutsu, +8 physical strength, +3 courtesy, +2 alchemy, a level 3 assessment, and storage. It also had a map for evaluation. I was surprised that the D-Zinc had such rare skills. The young man said he was born with them. Then, he asked the magician for his opinion. The result was a necklace courtesy +3, sword fencing +8, earring alchemy +2, shoes physical strength +8. That's all. After giving each of them a card with a score of 3, he needs to drink a mana potion. I was amazed he was already on his 5th bottle of potion, and the young man explained that enchanting uses a lot of mana. Giving Karen the map, he asked her to drop some blood on it. She complied, and, looking at the map, gasped. Bogart and Will used their maps the same way. The mage realized the card could only be used for skills. He promised Jinku an extra reward if Jinku revealed their extra qualities. Jinku said qualities are indefinable, unlike skills, so he did not mention them. Many people have untapped qualities and talents, but if someone paid him more, he would be happy. The young man felt he did not want to help a stranger. Jink made some good money. Thanking the adventurers, he said this is what an A-rank party is all about. Bogart was clearly jealous of the man, and Will said it was a little odd. An enchanter and a very important figure, he was traveling alone. He had been deported, and the adventurers already knew it. So Karen asked him what he'd done because he didn't look like a criminal. Alex defended the young man, saying it wasn't true and he wasn't like that, asking them not to touch his friend and saying he had behaved inappropriately, but was being falsely accused. He didn't talk about his abilities or his family because if others found out they would exploit them, so he keeps a very small circle of people he trusts. He decided to go to the Coal Kingdom and was even glad he didn't have many friends because he was sure it was for the best. Will said they would help him cross the border. The magician turned to Karen to confirm this. The leader of the Sacred Flame confirmed it and said there are many different monsters near the border, but Jink has a strong heart. The young man thanked them and told them to hurry, since Mabitsburg was not far away. Soon they reached the Colt Kingdom's outskirts at the border of the remote town of Mabitsburg, and Zink decided no one in the city seemed to know him. Dzink weighed the bag of money he'd obtained from the enchantment in his hand and decided to spend it on shopping. He will buy the material for forging. At the shop he bought the best weapons and armor. The owner was pleased with its buying power. Jink immediately warned him it would take some time. He carefully chose his armor and weapons, a simple but sturdy spear. He assured the young man that only in his store would he find everything he needed. The store owner offered to pack everything he bought, but Jink thanked him for his concern, and he said he owned a storage facility. Dzing chose a spear for Esther that should last him a long time. Moreover, he planned to enchant it as best he could. The next morning, on the outskirts of Mobitsburg, Dzink gave Alec the gift and thanked him in advance for taking it to his brother. He prepared quality assessment cards and made one for Alec. The man thanked Jinka, and she noticed his enchantment had already reached level 12. Because of that, he gained enough experience points to level up. Afterward, a group of adventurers led by Alec traveled to the capital. That same day at the non-land mansion, the head of the house firmly stated that Esther will become the heir to the house of non-land. He wants him to understand this and forget Jinka while Esther sat in his room and thought about his brother. My father got angry and asked Esther if he had been working the whole time he was away. He warned his son not to do it again. Helping Jinku was a mistake. Old non-land promised to punish him. And when Jink left the next day, he would not be allowed out for 50 days. Then he left. She left him a potion and told him he could see his brother off tomorrow. Jink was no longer his brother. With that, my father left. Esther looked out the window of his room and wondered what his brother was doing now. Maybe he was wandering alone in the forest. The disaster was sure that Dzink could get out of this country alive, and meanwhile it would mean a great deal. Venturers and Jink fought evil orcs, and his brother did his best. Bogger knocked down another monster with his sword. Elf. Karen took down the goblin with a well-aimed arrow. Against adventurers, the goblins were weaklings. We'll use the wind cutter magic to slice the orc into pieces. And standing over a pile of monster corpses, Jink said admiringly that this is what a rank means, while someone replied that it was all thanks to the enchantment. His rank will rise soon, and he had previously improved his fire magic as well. Jink knew he couldn't even start a forest fire, so he decided he needed to improve his magic. Aaron and Boggard returned after chasing the fleeing monsters, and Jink thought the closer they came to the border, the more monsters they encounter, the less likely a low-ranking merchant or adventurer who goes on this journey will reach the border. Karen agreed and said a C-ranked adventurer would likely not even reach the border. Merchants crossing the border hire a B rank or a convoy. She also knows a wyvern lives deep in the forest. Sometimes it shows up beside this road, and an employer might even ask someone to catch it. Jink did not want to meet this wyvern right now. Karen said cheerfully there was no need to worry because the border was already very close. Indeed, very soon, the party reached the border town of Colt. The travelers wondered if they would face any problems, and Jink was especially concerned. Karen gave him a reassuring wink and told him not to worry, saying they would help if needed. Boggard proudly said they were A rank, that Karen was S rank and of noble blood, and that there are viscounts in the local guard, so everything would be all right. Jink wished he had not had to use physical force and hoped they could pass border control without incident. An armed border guard stepped in front of them and asked to see their identity cards. My guard's eyes widened at the name Jinka Nonland on the map. The youth confirmed his status and said he had lost it and was now a commoner. He is the same DZNK Nonland. The border guard said he was rumored to have left the royal capital 5 days ago, so it was strange that he arrived at the border so quickly and his means of travel were unclear. Karen stepped forward and told the guard to be quiet, saying they had arrived by carriage and the child had simply been told to leave. She did, asking what the guard's problems were. The border guard bristled and said a commoner like her had no right to speak to a knight like that. But when he found out that, he became much more polite. The elf warned him to be careful and watch his words, asking whether rudeness was customary here. The knight asked for forgiveness, said he would summon a superior, gave Karen a disapproving look and said he would do the talking next time. And Jink asked the girl not to be rude to them. One of the guards guessed it was a sacred flame. At that moment, the chief walked over to the travelers. He apologized for his subordinate's rudeness and said he would punish him later. The boss asked whether they were from the cult kingdom. They went to the infamous Rosult kingdom, where only incompetence lived. And he then pointed to Dzink, saying this man served in the convoy, was blinded by his status, and tried to poison the head of the family. The young man realized he was being charged with attempted murder, and said they had all eaten at the same table with their father, that the other man had just seemed like an extra person. Will chimed in, saying they had accompanied Dzink and knew he had been deported. He had been ordered to leave the country within a set time and not return. There was no reason to detain him. The boss grimaced and said he had arrived suspiciously fast. The magician told the chief they had accompanied him for 3 days and had seen no suspicious behavior. He doesn't think this man will cause any problems. If the man managed to travel from the capital in 5 days, then he must be capable. The chief looked thoughtful, then admitted it was hard for him. If he could make it here, everything was fine. Afterward, he apologized for wasting the travelers' time and promised they would be more careful when questioning the nobles next time. Aaron said he hoped so. Deezing surveyed the city and said the kingdom of Cole begins here. Finally, he reached the border. The young man thanked Will and Karen for their help and said he would have had a hard time without them because of that security check. Will said it was nothing and asked how Rosalta would react if they found out he was an enchanter. Consider this. They may force him back or kill him. Either way, he won't be left alone, so he offers him a suggestion. He suggested raising the adventure level first, and since he has no job registration, his rare skill as an enchanter makes the guild willing to grant him protection. If he registers in Kola, he will not be able to operate in Rosalta. So Deezink decided it was best to protect himself in advance, and Will then suggested he go straight to the guild. He said goodbye to Boggard, and Will said he would tell him everything himself. Boggard agreed with him. On the way to the guild, the magician told Karen he wanted to make a healing bracelet, or rather practice making one. Thanking him, they entered the Adventurers Guild wearing a cult. The adventurers there immediately recognized Karen. Everyone agreed she was as beautiful as ever. They were curious about the man beside her and why she was so friendly with him. The receptionist congratulated Sacred Flame on their return and asked what they had today. Well pointed at Jink and asked for a professional certificate and to have the boys' rank raised. The guild asked Zink to show his loot, and he asked for a room bigger than the guild office. Everyone stepped into the backyard. The young man began untying the bag and said the goblins had come first. The employees asked him if he had a body and a bag. One shook her head and said that was only for beginners. The other warned Jinka that to prove you killed a monster, you don't need to present the whole corpse. Jink emptied the goblin ears from the bag, leaving the employees speechless, and the young man claimed he still had 10 bags of cobalt and slug parts. Unfortunately, he still hadn't dismembered the orcs. The administrators couldn't believe this guy had put it all together by himself. When Jink dumped his loot, it filled half the guild's backyard. He spread his hands and cheerfully asked them to accept his work. The administrators enthusiastically said it had ample storage space. Goblin magician, 7 bodies, goblin. Shamans, 6 bodies. Goblins, 812 bodies. Kobolds, 41 bodies. Slugs, 37 bodies. Work general, 1 body. Orcs, 119 bodies. 24 gold coins and 3 gold bars were allowed after deducting the fee for dismembering the Jinku. Jink asked me to transfer all of this into yen, and it came to 24.3 million yen. In Jink Hero's previous life, he couldn't even earn more than a 6-digit amount. Now it was time to raise his rank. Jink has enough points for rank C, but to reach rank D or higher, he must pass a test. Zink asked me to tell you about the test. The receptionist said that if he was a swordsman then you would need to go through a sparring session with the examiner. He can take the exam right now. Dzank agreed to the suggestion. The girl volunteered to go with him, and she allowed his friends to attend. The exam was held in the Testarina Guild. One of the adventurers recognized the man as the person the guard had talked to during the inspection. It was the refugee who fell from Rosalt. I didn't know why Karen was bothering with it. An examiner stepped into the arena and asked Jinka if he was the one taking the test today. Guildmaster Snow himself was assigned to be Jinka's sparring partner. Guildmaster Snow rarely acted as the examiner, and the stands were packed as everyone wondered who would face him, since rumor said the man had killed 100 orcs alone. Many people did not believe it. Sparring with Snow and fencing is admitting defeat from the start. Everyone thought this kid had already lost. Meanwhile, an announcement said the rank advancement test was about to start. Due to time constraints, the D and C rank tests would be combined. The guild leader looked at his opponent and said he had heard of him and was eager to size up the youth. The referee warned Zink that he might be injured, possibly seriously, during the test. At the podium, Karen shouted at him not to worry. If anything happens, it will heal him. One of her admirers on the podium gritted his teeth. Jealous of the other man who also wanted Karen to heal him, he hoped the guild leader would kill that asshole. The referee started the match and asked the fighters to begin. Snow said that if Dink did not want to attack first, going on the offensive, Snow charged the youth fiercely but was immediately surprised by the youth's speed and unbreakable defense. The sword was in expert hands. The crowd still felt the guild master was taking control. Many jealous onlookers shouted for Snow to finish him. Drink realized this was the first time he had ever fought a human with a sword. Fighting monsters was nothing compared to what was happening now. The guild leader had said sparring rarely lasted more than 3 minutes. But the opponent still hadn't lost his nerve, and Snow hadn't seen that in a long time. It was the DZINCU's turn to attack. With lightning speed, he charged at the examiner while Snow defended himself. Jink checked his status. Being at swordsmanship level 104 proved he was a genius swordsman. He knew that if he made a mistake, his opponent would take the initiative immediately, 1 yawn, and Snow would strike him with a sword, and he knows how to enjoy it. Karen told the friend beside her that the fight had only just begun, and DZNK had already been wounded. Her friend said the boy wasn't bad. He has to move a lot and doesn't even have time to rest. Karen decided that even Jinku couldn't beat the guild master. Still, Snow is only human and has limited stamina. Jink watched him use different techniques, his moves straight out of a textbook, and the young man's image as a seasoned fighter began to fade. He realized he could strike it with his sword. Snow had not expected the fight with the adventurer to last this long, but the guild leader still thought it would end soon. With only level 27 swordsmanship, Jinxa normally would not have entered this fight, but an enchantment let him attack the examiner without fear. The youth's next attack ended badly for Snow, the Dzink sword's blade cutting open the examiner's side as the crowd in the stands cried out. Snow was so badly injured he had to surrender. The judge declared Zink's victory non-land. The audience was stunned, never having seen Snow hurt before, and they could not believe a kid like Dzink could beat him. Lawnland wondered why the others were surprised, and Karen ran into the arena to offer healing to the guild head, but he refused. The potion would be enough to heal his wound, he said. Snow was shocked because he had basically lost to a child. She rushed to Jinku and offered to heal him as a reward for winning. The young man said he was only lightly wounded. On the secret stands, Karen's admirer glared at the picture, and the magician Will, who approached Jinku from the stands, said he had defeated the so-called genius and guild head and would ask me to share my secret with him. Jinku replied that it was all due to the enchantment. The mage said his victory was fair because he used his abilities and asked about the young man's swordsmanship level. Snow learned Jinko was level 175 and called him a monster, noting there are only 3 such enchanters in the world, so he must be the 4th. And it was stated his abilities are now part of the sacred flame, while Jinko also has the score ability. Snow checked his card and said he had proof of it. He then evaluated his stats. The Jink turned to him and said Snow had been very strong, and that without the enchantment, he could not have defeated him. The young man noticed the guild leader's expression shift. He said he had only put in a little effort and would learn from it. As head of the guild, he appoints him as an enchanter and appraiser. We'll raise our hands and congratulate Jinka for promoting him to preliminary rank C. The young man asked the magician what the preliminary rank meant, paused, and said that enchanters can easily reach S rank. Leaving someone with this ability at a low rank would be dangerous for everyone. These are just security measures. Jink was therefore given a temporary C rank. He asked Will and the Wildermont to explain why he had to take the test if he could raise his rank so easily, and the magician replied that there were reasons for this. Such a rare professional is an irreplaceable human resource. If he cannot defend himself, an escort will be assigned to accompany him wherever he goes. Therefore, they needed to evaluate his combat abilities. For that reason, many people were here. Zink asked why he was helping him. He said he wondered what would happen to him after leaving the country and what the consequences would be if he used his abilities, since as an enchanter and appraiser, he is a great player. He might be able to reach SS rank, and Jink asked with interest whether there was a rank above S, and the magician said there was. An SS rank places him beyond anyone else's authority, putting him on the same level as the owners of castles or countries, and he still has much to experience. He wondered if he wanted to try to achieve it. Deasing closed his eyes and thought about his deportation, the contempt he'd felt, and his escape from Rosol. Determined to prove himself, he decided to show them all his abilities using his enchantment. SS ranks sounded good to him. A carriage guarded by a special escort moved slowly along a road through the forest. Inside, the crew. While working on the mission, he found a formula he could use to complete the tasks, and with the exam still 2 weeks away, he expected to finish them in time. Guards shouted outside, and he knew they were under attack by kobolds, but the warriors stayed alert and kept guarding the Jink. A young man stepped out of the carriage, determined to help the knights fight the monsters. It was an ideal chance to test your water magic skills. D-Zinks aimed the magic water ball at the kobolds, but nothing happened. The kobolds were unaffected by the spell. His first attempt failed. Deciding to focus, he recalled his training and imagined it not as a water balloon, but as a heavy, fast ball as if made of lead. The second try was more successful, and the ball struck one of the monsters directly. In the end, the kobolds could not withstand the human's attack and fled. Jink celebrated his progress in magic. The enchantment gave him water magic from the start. He decided to be more careful with his aim because he could have let down the people who were relying on him. A convoy member apologized for disturbing his studies, but they had to protect him. Jink told them not to worry because he was just practicing magic while traveling to the capital of the Coal Kingdom and studying for an exam. 2 weeks ago, after passing the test with flying colors, Jink, Karen, and Will went to Count Brando's mansion, where they were met, told everything was ready, and Will said they would stay there that night. The magician said Count Brando is well known and unlike aristocrats who think they're superior. He added that he had looked after him when he was little and that having a connection with someone like that wasn't a bad idea. Jinky and the gentleman from Sacred Flame were led to a private room. Zink met Count Nicholas Brando of the Coal Kingdom in person. When the Count asked him to address him directly if necessary, the young man said that, although he was S rank, he did not know much and asked the Count to call him simply D-Sink. The nobleman was surprised by his politeness and shook his hand. Then the Count invited everyone to the table and asked them to enjoy the delicious meal he had prepared for them. He wished them a good meal. Dzink found the food much better than the camp's canned rations, and the Count asked what he planned to do next after his successful escape from Rosault. The young man said he wanted to leave the Rose-Old Kingdom, go to the Cult Kingdom, and raise his rank. After that, he settles in the Yamato Kingdom and attends a local high school at 14, having unexpectedly earned an S rank early. The Count realized being S rank would mark him as aristocratic even in Yamato, so he had to worry about people from Rosalto coming after him. Zink replied that he did not want to stay in one place for long, but wanted to see the world and gain many new experiences. The Count seemed satisfied with his answer. He suggested Zink go to Karalte, the kingdom's capital. The Cult Kingdom's most prestigious high school is there. It is hard to get into, but he should be able to, and if he wants to gain experience, he only needs to go to the nearest city, Hamel. The city sits directly above the Coal Kingdom's largest dungeon, which is 84 levels deep. No one has reached the dungeon's lowest point. Monsters of all sizes kept appearing there. Jink thought it was a real adventure. Karen told him he had to take the entrance exam before he could go to school. Jinka reassured her that everything would be fine. On the way to Karalte, he will be studying. Karen was surprised by his determination. The Count suggested that the young man introduce him to an adventurer's party. Brando asked Jinka what he thought of the idea that when he goes to the capital, he will pass through the lands of aristocrats he knows, stay at his mansion in Kerala, and be introduced on his behalf. The Count's son, close in age, is also thinking of taking the entrance exam, and the Count hoped they could become friends if possible. Jink said he wasn't used to it and felt a little uneasy. As Jink Hero remembered it, every day had been the same, but now he was full of excitement. Constantly learning something new, he decided to accept Count Brando's suggestion and sincerely thanked the members of Sacred Flame for the invaluable help they had provided. Aaron said it was a pleasure doing business with him. She said they would meet up at the Dragon's Tears and return to Rosul. Once their business with their brother was settled, they would go back to Karalte, and they might meet again. Zink expressed the hope that they would be all right. After that, Jink set off in the carriage, pleased. As he delved into his literature study, he thought that even Dinkiro did not have to suffer so much in his previous life. While staying at the aristocrat's mansion, he studied. After the battle with the monsters, he stayed at the camp to study. The nobles who sheltered him received an enchanted item and a hospitality assessment card from him. He studied tirelessly. At last, the carriage stopped and he was asked to step out for a tour. They reached Coralte. Zink stepped out of the carriage and was struck by the city's massive walls, twice as large as the walls of the royal capital of Rosalt. He was already impatient to walk around the city itself. He was warned by his guards that he could not walk the streets alone and that if anything happened to him, they would all be dead. The guard captain told him to wait until he had passed the entrance exam, then said they should go to the mansion now. At the Brando mansion, Jinku was greeted by the count's wife Arya and their son Chris, who said his father had mentioned him and that he wanted to join the school within a month, and Jinku asked to be called simply Jink, so he would feel more at ease. And Arya said she could not offer much hospitality, but wanted him to feel at home. Chris, despite his mother's protests, decided to show Mr. Jink their house. Despite all the advantages of Jinkiro's powers, one weakness remained. He had overworked himself and reached his endurance limit. Upon entering the house, he fell to his knees and lost consciousness. At Kal Royal Palace, His Majesty was told by the nobles that an enchanter had arrived. The enchanter wanted to enter Kal High School. Chris ordered me to find out more about Jinka and take him to the infirmary. Jink lay on the floor checking his status, already at the maximum assessment level. And finally, the day of the Kal Kingdom High School Magic Department entrance exam arrived. Jink had heard the school was very hard to get into, and that the exam would not be as difficult in Japan. He studied so hard he fainted at Count Brando's house, but he still gained magical experience and, though he looked terrible, Chris took care of him. Count's son, sitting in the exam, noticed how easily Zink was solving the questions. The written part of the exam was finally over. The magic practice test came next. Applicants stood in 2 rows on the training field and were urged to show everything they could do. Teachers were ready to assess the type and rarity of their abilities. Number 783, Rank Adventure Mr. Jink, was called. Young men noticed that here even applicants are addressed as gentlemen. Candidates whispered endlessly when they heard that Jink had an S rank. Everyone wondered how he would perform, and the young man decided to attack with magic. They still had to rate the enchantment. Jin stopped before the examiner, Mr. Dusty Pennon, a leading figure in the Koch kingdom who was regarded as a sage. He told Jinku he wanted to evaluate his enchantment and magic evaluation skill. The Marquis then checked Jink's magic and healing status. Penelma found his water magic weak. Other applicants showed stronger healing signs, and the young man felt how unpleasant it was to be evaluated when she asked him to demonstrate his abilities. The kids decided to start with the water balloon. After the exam, they left school with Chris, who had been the first to use it. He was delighted by his demonstration of water magic and thought the water cyclone looked really cool, while Jink said he had sprayed everyone because he had gone too far with his enchantment skill. They might deduct his points for this. Either way, this Marquis Penum is a high-ranking noble. Then he can tell the king about it. He was also an enchanter. Rosalta learned it sooner than he expected, as it turned out. After the exam, Adam went to the royal palace, and the king asked him how it went. The Marquis said everything went well, and besides enchantment, this guy also has swordsmanship, physical strength, and a large storage space. King Cole, on a routine call, stroked his beard thoughtfully while Panem continued reporting the man's progress to His Majesty. She said Jink had completed 96% of the written part of the exam. That is not bad. Few people achieved results like that. The Marquis believed this person could enter the magic department's top class. One of the masters, indignant, asked how he could speak of this since he was still a child. The king said he understood the concerns of those present and wondered what they would say about all humanity, since he had heard that Jing had tried to poison his father. If someone with that power became a villain, they would be a threat to the stake. Manum reassured the king and said his assessment showed he did not view Jinka as a sinner, and that Jinka's Sigjutsu skills are extremely low for a non-land descendant. After all, their family is known for owning a spear. The fallen man might have been wrongly accused and exiled to Rosalt. The academicians at the meeting were divided. Some thought that in any case Zink was an aristocrat and a man of power. Many disliked it, and others thought it wasn't worth paying attention to. Everyone wondered whether the man had been sent away for failing to use a spear or for other reasons in Rosalta. In Rosalta, he was banished without anyone knowing he was an enchanter. Normal Call has ordered a place to be prepared. The king said their country would shelter the Jinka enchanter, but they would not exploit his abilities for their own gain. A few days later, Jink learned he had passed. Only 3 people in total made it into the first class. He also congratulated Chris on starting 2nd grade. Chris made it after all. Chris told Jink that his mother had heard about an invitation to an audience with the king and asked the young man if he had a formal outfit for such occasions. Before then, he had only seen him in plain clothes, and Desink said he was a former aristocrat who had sold all his possessions to raise money for deportation. He remembered that creating an assessment card for the aristocrats had earned him money. He decided he should probably go shopping in the city, and Chris agreed. It served as housing for applicants, and also as a base for exploring the underground labyrinth and more. They searched for human resources and a slave factory. The young man was offered a place among the top 10. Slave trading is common in this world, but Jinku was still not used to it, and he needed someone rated B or higher. Dzing pointed to a 12-year-old girl named Nina and said they had finally found such a person, and the slaver said he wanted to sell her as a salt woman, but she was being driven. A pack of dogs attacks and bites her. He now sells her like a simple slave, setting the price at 1 gold coin and 3 silver coins. Jink agreed, and during the sale he put a drop of his own blood on the girl's neck. The sale was finalized, and the owner announced the girl had been transferred for use by the DZINCU. Falling to her knees, she said that from that day on, she was her master's slave, and he could use her however he wanted. Jink invited her to follow him. He brought her to Count Brando's house, sat her down, and asked where she had come from. Nina said she was born into a poor farming family. One winter, they ran out of money and sold her as an extra mouth to feed. Jink figured it might be a common story, but his parents still had a hard time deciding. The girl said the new father claimed she had been abandoned, and the young man understood and decided he was done asking questions. Apparently, her father abandoned her too. The Ni turned to her and said he was giving her 5 orders and that she must always obey him. Do not hurt him or lie to him. Do not reveal information about him or do anything against him. If she follows these rules, she may be free. Even though she is a slave, she must remember that he does not intend to use her for evil purposes and will punish her for rudeness or mistakes. He then asked if she had any questions. The girl replied she had one. Because of a scar, she wants to work at night. Jinky was outraged and asked if she knew what kind of night work it was. Nina said she had heard about it. Link interrupted her and said that was not why he had bought her. The girl said it was the only way she could help him because she could not do physical work or read or write. They told her this was her destiny and what she had been born to do. Jingle. He handed the girl a potion bottle and said he would heal her wound first, explaining that an ordinary potion could not cure such a wound. Nina asked, "It is hard to believe such things would be given to slaves." Jink ordered her to drink it. She deserves it. He told her he had a knack for judging people and chose her because she was a good cook. Her other skills are not very strong, but they can be improved, Jink said, placing his hand on the girl's shoulder as he asked for her help and needed her strength, and he added that she should bathe after the wound healed. He would then prepare new clothes for her. Nina, surprised, asked if there was anything she could do to help. DZNC said that was exactly what he had in mind. Tears in her eyes, the slave began to obey his order, and Chris was grateful to Jinku for bringing Nina to the house. A skilled cook, she moved her hands with incredible speed. Their headmaid is also surprised. They now eat with great pleasure. Jink used alchemy to turn unwanted items into bullion to get money. Dzink had used up many mana potions, so when Chris asked why he needed so much money, Dzink said he would need more slaves. Chris asked him to explain more from that point on. At the same time, Nina said she had made cookies. She encouraged young people to try it. Dzink accepted a whole jar of delicious cookies she offered. The girl asked him to tell her about their impressions later. After Nina left, Chris noticed she was wearing a maid's uniform. Jink asked Chris if he knew where to buy Daddle's slaves. There were none at the factory where he bought Nina. Chris said those slaves could be found. The so-called prisoner sale agencies hold criminal slaves. Jinka found all the high school dorms too big, but he thought bringing Nina here would make him comfortable. Thoughts kept returning to his need for battle slaves and the many other things that required money. Chris told Jinku that classes start today, but they are in different classes and he might skip some. They are credited to him. Zink told Chris it would be odd to miss class in the first few days. Zink was warmly received in class, especially by the girls, who had heard he was an S-ranked venture and found him very handsome. They wondered if he already had a fiancé. Many classmates felt he was out of their league, and some hoped to become his mistress. The school sounded as if he'd never left Rosalt. It bothered him. He thought they cared about his status, not him. His involvement brings him nothing and gives them a big advantage. They seem to be of low origin. That's it. That's why they're so desperate. Their future depends on it. If they want money, send them to kill a few monsters. Magic doesn't depend on whether you're a man or a woman. There are many jobs that hire women, so they should try to reach the top themselves instead of relying on someone else's wallet. Jink met Najenda call. She was also a freshman who had just entered first grade. Her surname told him she was Princess Nagenda. She asked Jinka to treat her as a classmate. Jinka replied that he was now an adventurer and this was the first year of their adventure, so he might not see her often. The girl said she was on business for her father because the state is large and royal duties are complex. Then D. Zink noticed students handing money to a man they called Mr. Blog. He was a big man who said it was time for all the students to pay for his friendship, and he felt they were giving him too little this time. One of the students said in a startled voice that this month had not been easy for him, and the Blog grabbed him by his clothes and asked if he truly wanted to know what would happen to him if he refused to be friends, saying the friend should be from the Duke's family, while Jink asked an agenda who the fat guy was, and the girl replied that he was the heir of the Randosal family. In middle school, he acted like he could do whatever he wanted. His actions led to many expulsions. Now he is in the 3rd grade. Jink was surprised and asked how he had managed to get into high school back then. Najenda said his father had done everything he could. There was no proof, and even the royals couldn't do anything about it. The blogger approached the princess and greeted her politely. The princess asked the fat man what had just happened. The blogger let out a nasty giggle and said he had only been chatting with a friend. Asking the princess for permission to speak to the young man beside her, he then asked Jinka if he deserved such a high rank. The man said he wanted to hire him and exploit his S rank, noting that as a commoner he could use the Randosal family name, which infuriated Jinka. The blogger asked him rudely if he was listening. The young man told the rude man not to touch him. The blogger warned the young man he would regret hitting him. Holding out his fists, he claimed Jinky had started it and said he was good at hand-to-hand combat. A short blow to the jaw subdued the representative of a well-known family. The fat man collapsed to the floor. Wiping blood from his nose, Jinx told him he had not read the school rules, and that at this school it did not matter who he was or which family he came from. Your class doesn't matter whether you're noble or commoner or in 1st or 3rd grade. No one can assault you. He is not in middle school. He then brought up a plan to leave this place. The girl told Jinku she would be afraid if he looked at her. Annoyed, the young man said it was not very beautiful, and the princess calmed him, asking him not to worry. Then she asked Jinka if he had received an invitation from her father. It's not necessary, but it would be nice if he came to the palace. The young man said it was an honor, but he had no official suit and could not afford one. Because he was saving on other things, Nijenda said he was an adventurer and that being a deasing thinker was normal. A few days later, King Nomal Cole personally greeted Jinka at the palace and thanked him for attending the official reception. Dazing said it was an honor for him. The king said he had heard rumors that nobles often asked him to make an appraisal card for them. He thought it might be difficult. The young man replied that he was not. For this, he receives rewards. The king asked Jink to use enchantment and evaluation on his behalf. Jink promised he would do whatever he could to help. He would be glad to do so. The young man was content to turn his disappointment into official work. The normal remembered his daughter telling him about an incident with a child from the Randosal family. Does he think it was careless on his part? Deasing said he knew someone like that blogger. A person who shows strength and asserts himself at the expense of the weak will not be liked by anyone. He could not forgive a man like that, but for now he was willing to accept any punishment. The king said that was fine, and that he only wanted to check him. He and Nagenda did not care about him. The king thought it looked like the man would not use enchantment with malicious intent. Asked the young man if he could get something interesting for doing well in school. He replied that he wanted the right to buy slaves from an agency that sells prisoners' slaves. The king was very surprised by the request. Desink said he bought them to explore the underground labyrinth beneath Hamel. He wanted more options, so he recruited talented people. Normal understood the young man's aim but could not understand why he wanted slaves. He replied that hiring ordinary adventurers and servants might bring spies from Rosalt, and he avoids that to protect himself. The king realized Jink was very wise and not what people said, and wanted to be his friend. Before long, Dzink had the chance to visit an agency that sold prisoners as slaves. The authorities confirmed his permission, and he and Nina were allowed to go inside. Dzink hoped to find many suitable slaves there and told the girl she did not have to go with him, warning it was not a good place, but she objected and said it would be an important experience. Many prisoners jumped on their cage bars to scare visitors. Nina asked Jinka if he felt afraid. This isn't her first time. Instead of answering, he asked her if she liked anyone here. Today, she chooses. Nina said she liked any of them, and D's Inc. admitted he was still tired of them. The young man noticed a single slave that was combat-ready and almost at its ceiling. His name was John. Turning to the warden, he said he wanted to speak to the prisoner and asked John what he had done to be accused of murder. And the slave replied that he was the son of a rich merchant, had a bad relationship with his parents' second wife, and she had decided to get rid of him. An attacker had a knife during the conflict, and DZNK said it was self-defense. Nina saw the slave was very expensive, costing 53 platinum coins. The amount in Japanese yen was 5.2 billion. Dazing thought about it. It already has good stats, and buying it will make it even better. How many assessment cards will he need to make? The boss told Jinka in disbelief that it would take a lot of space and equipment, and could not believe he would actually go through with it after the accident, but he still planned to buy it. He is still a murderer, so aristocrats and merchants do not take it. Young said his father tried to buy it back. For relatives, the price is 10 times higher, so it's hard to do, no matter how much money his father has. He can't help it. Facing his family will be impossible. Nina told Jinku that the man was not scary at all. Jink firmly decided to buy Ian. After he left prison, he asked His Majesty for a mansion. Chris said with a laugh that he now understood what he had been waiting for. My mother was just talking to the royal family. Link asked whether the Brando family's land was in question. Chris said his nerves even gave him a stomachache and that he had received requests to create a rating map. Dzink thanked Chris for taking part in his work. Chris revealed that Nina is learning to read and write and is practicing cooking. Now she can cook orc meat. If you don't think this is an orc, it tastes quite pleasant. Ian, meanwhile, trained in wind magic and swordsmanship, and his stats grew. Jink gave him a hard-to-find sword from the Amato Kingdom, and often noticed Ian looked preoccupied. Although Ian said he had nothing to worry about, Jink decided to talk to him when they went shopping. He invited Ian to go to the city with him while they walked down the street. A figure in a black cloak watched them from around the corner, clearly trying to go unnoticed. Jink handed Ian the potion and antidote box, and told him to count the weapons and gear, and as before to ask Jink if he had any questions. Ask them without hesitation. Otherwise, the party will fail and they may get lost. The man who had been watching them from around the corner suddenly stepped in front of him, armed with a spear, and ordered him not to use his brother for his own purposes. He proposed releasing him on the spot. Jink realized this was Ian's younger brother. The status said his name was Ash, a level 10 unemployed person with good sword skill, and Dzink felt sad. Ian's abandoned brother looked at Ash and asked if he really wanted to detain the S-rank royal adventurer. He wouldn't recommend that. Ian's brother then told him to stop showing off. He said he would defeat him and bring his brother back. Yingen registered him as the official owner for 53 platinum coins, and he was annoyed that Ash was the same age. He didn't realize it. John turned to Jinku and begged me to forgive him for his foolishness, asking to be punished, but pleading that his brother not be harmed. Nash shouted angrily at him to stop talking. Jink refused to bow at the man's feet and hated the idea, realizing he now looked like a villain. He turned to Ash and asked if Ash hated him for killing his mother and mother-in-law. The younger brother said what he hated most was being turned into a slave. He felt smarter and better than his brother and wanted to punch him. He also wants a brother like that to come back to him. Ash told his brother that his father had hoped to find the money and get it out, but the man had already bought it. Jink told Ash there was nothing he could do now and that all his actions were pointless, saying he would be forced to become his opponent, and asking if that was what he wanted. Ash bravely invited Jinku to attack him. The young man followed his advice and struck in the blink of an eye. Nesh's spear had been chopped into small pieces and Ian's younger brother was unarmed. Jink looked at the discouraged youth and asked whether he still wanted to fight, while the guards ran over and began to tie Ash up. They accused him of attacking the Jink. A young man ordered his release, saying they were from the Adventurers Guild and that he would take the prisoner there himself. The others apologized, said they'd just heard from the guild, and urged him to go with them. Jink didn't mind, said he needed to take his purchases home, and asked Jan to return without him. He promised to discuss it at home. Jink returned home to find an excited Nina telling him Jan was about to die. When he ran to Ian's room, he saw that the man was preparing to kill himself with a dagger. The young man lunged at him, grabbing his arm with the weapon. He demanded they let him die because keeping him alive would disrespect his relative. Jink tried to calm him. Above all, he feared wasting 50 million yen. After Jinkyu disarmed Ian, the slave asked the master to punish him because he deserved it. Angry, the young man said they were going to the maze tomorrow and that he would have to explore it and ride with the horses. He told him not to downplay the situation. Jink said it was better than dying. Ian was ordered not to do anything unless given permission. He promised to try his hardest. Nina asked Jinka whether he planned to let Ian die. Jinka reassured her, saying everything was fine and that he had already forgiven him. Jan asked about Ash's fate, and Jink said Ash had been placed in the guild's detention cell to reflect on his behavior, adding that no one would execute Jan. Jan said that as a child he suffered beatings from his mother-in-law and needed care. He has a brother and cares for him. The slave asked Mr. Jinka if he had a brother too. The young man replied that his brother's name was Esther, but he did not behave that way. Zink longed for Esther. It was unclear how he lived there. At that moment at the non-land's house, Esther sat beside Elsa. He soothed her by stroking her hand and told her that her brother was probably fine, which Esther, as Elsa's nanny, already knew. Brother D's ink had been like her own son, but in this situation, he was powerless. The butler then relayed his father's orders that he must not go out without permission, and said his father would bring him dinner soon. My father was not home, so there should be no problem. And the butler asked Hester if he was still thinking about this fallen man. He told me to forget about that sinner. Esther asked the old man if he had nothing to do and if he had no one to assert himself with. The butler suggested that Jing's things be put away and that he put stilettos on his shoes. Master called him an idiot and went to his room. He thought, resentfully, that everyone in the city was talking about Jinka as a fallen non-land. Jink, a brother, never missed training as he aimed to become the heir to the famous spearman title. He always admired him. He kept working despite everything and was very skilled with the spear. After working hard, he beat his brother in a duel. At first, it was only a game, and his grandfather told him to practice more with the spear, but nothing changed. My brother said his actions were very brave, and resisting is hard for him. He asked him about his progress and his movements. Jink always went to him for advice. That must have been humiliating, but his brother still supported him and treated him the same as always. That day, everything changed. Grandpa began to favor him and treated Jinku more harshly. He was the one who spread the nickname Fallen. My brother got a bad reputation and then went off in an unknown direction. Esther blamed herself too. He stole my brother's whole life, but a few days had passed since grandfather and father were summoned to the royal palace, and I wonder what they're talking about. A discussion was underway at the Rosol Royal Palace with representatives of the non-manned family, and they were asked how they would take on this responsibility. The Majesty directed the question mainly to Nobel Nonland, the former head of the House of Nonland. Regardless, the enchanter was sent away for a reason, and that turned out to be a mistake. Moreover, his escape to the Kingdom of Kal places him outside Rosalt's reach, and getting him back will be extremely difficult. The crown prince of the kingdom of Rosalt Elliot, angry, demanded to know how long this could continue. Nobel said they had to solve the problem together because members of the royal family were also involved in expelling the Jinka. This is their responsibility as well. Prince Evil said he expected to be eaten quickly by goblins and kobolds. He was lucky to reach the stake. As agile as a cockroach, he managed it. It was fortunate that this cockroach turned out to be an enchanter. After all, her father can also become an enchanter. The king ordered Elliot to stop it. Everything is simple. Because she carries her father's blood, Zenka and her father can become enchanters. The mystery is solved and the king is horrified. He asks his son why he told him that, and his heir replies with only a brief apology. He tells his father that he once overheard his conversation with a nobleman. The heir proclaims that he will become a ray of salvation. He summons the best wise man and the best wizard. Standing up and shouting, the young man expects he and his father will learn to be enchanters. Every noble at the table is shocked by what is happening. One person sitting there stands up in horror and angrily demands to know what it means. He had opposed banishing the Jinka, and now it turns out he is the king's secret son. Clutching his head, the man says it happened because of their position. The young Randosal heir stands stunned. It would have come out sooner or later. The hidden sins of the royal family and the non-land family have been exposed. Reading the book, Esther is distracted by the possibility that low-ranking adventurers have arrived in the world. Thinking they came to see his father or grandfather, he is told the Sacred Flame Group wants to see him, and he says he will be right there. A dark-haired man from the Sacred Flame stake represents all the adventurers from that group, and Dragon's Tears member Merce Karen, a blonde, says Esther looks very much like a girl, and the man with the trunk introduces himself as Alec Thunder, saying he has come to deliver something from Diesel. Easing Esther looks confused and does not seem to understand what is happening. The dark-haired man says the Stake Guild should have passed it on. He tells us that Zenk is alive and now living safely in Coralta. Tears fill Esther's eyes, and he can hardly believe it's true. His mind is filled with the thought that his body, my brother is fine and wants to introduce these people to someone else. Mrs. Karen happily agrees because she also wants to know about her brother. They all came to see Elsa, and she is very happy to hear about Yinka. Mr. Will be asked to tell us more, and he gladly agrees. The man reveals that Jinky is the son of the foreign Chanders in the world. The guy. Because he is skilled in evaluation and alchemy, Esther now understands why De Zinc asked for his blood. Elsa says she didn't know, even though she had been with him a long time. Esther tells her not to blame herself, and admits she didn't know either. Mr. says he tried to hide it but thinks it was the right choice. Elsa suddenly says that if they found out about this, he would lose his freedom in this country. Mr. Will says he has not heard any good rumors about Rosalta. He is not excited. He reports, for example, that he knows about the poisoning incident in the Chancellor's family. Esther and Elsa look excited. The king forced the Chancellor's daughter to give birth to a Jinka. Everyone froze in surprise. The blonde girl lashes out, saying this is not the time to talk about it, especially with Esther present. And the frightened man squeezes out an apology. Now Esther realizes she and Jink are not siblings. Elsa holds the boy by the shoulders and asks him to remember to be a child. She says everything is fine and we can continue. Decides to tell the full story of the current king. King Rosalta took the throne with the Chancellor's support, and they kept a secret. Dissatisfied with the state of affairs, the king invited the Chancellor's daughter to join him for fun. Obviously, his wife. Someone might have found out, but they hid the fact that the Chancellor's daughter was involved. The girl carrying D. Zink married Gordon of the non-manned family, and the nobleman opposed it because he did not want a grandson without his blood to inherit. On the day of the Chancellor's family party, the aristocrat poisoned the wine and food. Jink should have been there, but he was in training. Elsa's husband and son were poisoned along with the girl. Ventures called it a terrible, unforgivable story. Elsa said the aristocrat in Gordon had warned her that if anyone found out the story, it would be the end of. Elsa said in despair and bitterness that she could not even prevent Mr. Jane's expulsion. Esther tried to calm Elsa, saying it wasn't her fault, while his head was full of thoughts about the situation with Jink. Mr. Will says only the two of them knew, and adds that the capital is now criticizing the royal power. Karen says DZNK was kicked out for a reason. Will suddenly reveal that those facing minor risks to their trades will not refuse money, and will readily sell information. Elsa says she also knows the aristocrat's hemorrhoids have worsened, and Esther covers her face with her hand and the dragon's teeth. New Year's contestant says he is going back to calling because this country is a sinking ship, Mr. Nature asks Esther what she thinks about it. He replies that nothing good is left in this country. He suddenly stands and asks Lady Karen to make him her slave, which leaves the girl pleasantly shocked. Esther explains the offer by saying that he will be enslaved regardless, but he wants to be her slave, and Mistress Karen will then give Esther to his brother, Other. Having nowhere to go, Elsa suddenly wants to become a slave. The conversation is about the man in the black suit who works for the family here. He also knows this house is finished, and Mrs. Karen ominously asks Esther if he will obey her every order, to which the young man replies eagerly that he will. Everyone was surprised. Mrs. Karen first disguised Esther as a maid. She explains that he is no longer the heir to a high-ranking aristocrat, and that without a disguise, he will be recognized. A confused Esther. Someone thinks women's clothing reveals too much. Laughing, Elsa compliments the young man's new look. They climbed into the guild's famous hippo-vulture carriage and chose to go without. Lady Karen Esteman was stopped and is still recovering. Esther thinks he should call his brother Mr. Ding Ding now that they are no longer brothers. It's odd that this city of Hamel is called the City of Adventures. A blonde girl, her name appearing on screen, points at something to get Mr. Jink to look. She pointed at the maze as Jink and Jansaw watched, and Dizink said the maze was too demanding. Large Aya noted the building looked old, and said he'd heard adventurers used it as a hunting ground for monsters, so it felt like a small town. He thought it was fairly safe, but that unpleasant people could be found there. Jink told Ian he knew a lot, and the blonde man replied that he found something similar in his parents' house. His father sometimes took him on outings. The competition was made up of average adventurers from various clans. The girl asked what a clan was. She was told it was a group of adventurers made up of several smaller groups. You can join the clan as a group, and many powerful people in Hamel use clans for protection. Ian said people can be more intimidating than monsters. The frightened girl hoped they would not encounter such people. The group decided to go to the guild to gather more information. The building that Open Eat Adventure is in, compared to the guild and Coralta, is very large. Once inside, they saw a cafeteria that looked like one in a shopping mall and walked up to a unit. A knowledgeable girl who worked there said they were adventurers wanting to make a reservation, but something interrupted. A tall, apparently drunk man approaches them, teases them, and suggests they find an escort or join a clan. A working girl decides to call him Philip and tell him she is not speaking to him. Before the man apologizes for his behavior, saying he had been a little drunk, Jink says it's fine and hands the girl his guild card, which makes her very nervous. At the service, people nearby begin shouting in surprise because he is ranked, Jink said. He admits his skills aren't that high, and a nervous employee, stuttering, asks to go to the floor and says she must immediately inform them that the enchanter has arrived. Everyone was surprised the guys were sent straight to the 5th floor, because that was rare for them. Jan, Jink, and Nina settled into the room. Nina clearly liked the soft sofa and had already stretched out on it. Mona, a beautiful young woman, entered the room and said she was their manager and that they could contact her at any time with a question. Mr. Dees and Gunder wondered why everyone was so envious of them. The manager described the maze's features. Its main feature is an endless number of monsters, and corpses return to life after a while. After death, you may receive a magic stone or a valuable body part. The girl says the farther they go, the monsters get stronger. No one knows why. This is the end of the maze. Indoor climate may differ from surface conditions. The girl is right there. It's recommended to insulate your clothing, wear good shoes, and buy extra sets of clothes. Mona told me to go to the guild shop because she has a request for Mr. Jink. The guild requests collecting magic stones. Jink says there is a shortage of magic stones in the Coal Kingdom right now, and not all adventurers collect them. Magic stones in this world act like batteries. You can use them to start a fire or draw water. This is something needed in everyday life. They decide to focus on hunting slimes because they often drop magic stones. Dezink warned his friends that this was a real fight and repeated what Spell had said. He would not use it. Everything will depend on them. It happened suddenly. The slime appears and everyone draws weapons. Deasing says he can help with healing if possible, but the priority is to kill the slime. So he tells Ian to use his sword and wind magic and urges Nina to stay calm and remember her training session. Getting dazed helps Nina deal with the slime. He yells for her to move, saying it will get her used to it faster. She agrees but is very nervous. Ian cuts through this line with his sword. A fight breaks out among the guys, but Deasing calms them, praises them, and lifts their spirits. Nina is surprised to see the slime disappearing. He notes that, thanks to the enchantment, he does not feel tired, and each time he killed a slime his body glowed. Jink tells the guys that if they kill the slime they will earn experience points. He also notes that progress is different from mansion training, because leveling happens during real fights. Happy Nina says she was scared at first, but her movements improved, and now she wants to raise her level. Deasing turns to his friends and says they are now talking about leveling up or clearing the maze. Ian checks the map and finds a slug room on the 3rd floor that is off limits to anyone below B rank. Though B rank mages may enter, many monsters can appear there. Once inside, you cannot leave for a set time or until all the monsters are defeated. Jink takes out a potion bottle and says it will heal all wounds. Jink warns Ian and Nina to stay safe and not overdo it, because if you add up all the enchanted items, you can reach rank. The guys enter the room and don't know where everyone else is. A slime appears and the guy rushes into battle. Nina calls out that she can move faster. Ajink realizes there are more monsters than he expected. A man did something extraordinary. It became a water cyclone. D's Incorporated. With a single hit, it notes that the maze of growing complexity was not simple. Jink points out that the water cyclone uses a lot of mana, and adds that you now need to collect magic stones and jelly slime. The guys are... Nana turns to Jinku with a guilty look and apologizes because it's too early for her to fight. The man tells her not to worry. Two naive people. He notices and tells Ian and Nina they have gained some experience points and their levels are almost equal because Ian is level 56 and Nina is level 50. Ian, looking strained, says it's more sensible now to just collect stones, while Jink thinks about telling the guild to correct their stats. The dazing thoughts were completely focused on destroying the slime and ignored everything else. Nina was also advancing and had learned the shield mastery skill. They not only killed the slugs, but also gained a large amount of experience points. Deasing says these levels let them go lower. Ian, studying the map, says there is a room with goblins on the floor. On the 5th floor, Nina admits she is afraid to fight them, because they often attack her village and sting. The group decides not to go there. Ian offers a choice between the 9th floor with kobolds and the 15th with orcs. They decide hunting kobolds is the best option. Their drops will be valuable, and to fight the orcs they need more weapons. Nina says happily that they have a camp and hunt monsters. The guys act like real adventurers. The friends are on the 9th floor in a room with kobolds. A magic circle sits against the wall. Jing says this forces the kobolds to be attacked from only one side, and tells Nina to stay with Ian, while he and Ian attack with both magic and sword. Jinky will step in for Ian if Ian gets tired. An attack is happening. The guys run toward the evil kobolds. Ian fires an aerial arrow that tears off Kobold's arm and sends him flying backward. A terrible creature lunges at Nina with a swinging sword, but she skillfully blocks the blow. Using her shield, Nina turns the situation to her advantage and deals with Cole. These Incorporated calls his friends to him. He says he will raise a wall of water. The others follow his instructions. Desink assesses the situation and concludes the kobolds will not break through. Faced with such a wall, he decides they should take a break and pack up for now because the magic stones and cobalt knives will interfere in the fight if not removed. Nina nearly tripped over it. Desink agrees that something must be done. First, you need to deal with the kobolds. He concludes this because the water wall will soon disappear. The second round begins. Ian has an idea to speed up the process by attacking with magic, though Nina cannot use magic. If Jinky and Chansar agree, it will seem realistic. Nina, smiling happily, says she wants to use magic too. Mr. Jink says she doesn't have much mana. Ian suggests giving her a potion to boost her mana, because it's worth it. Feeling inspired, Nina shouts her agreement. Zink congratulates her on now being a temporary sorceress. The evil kobolds charged at the adventures, but they resisted. Nina uses a water balloon to help Jinx. Recommends pausing to pack up. Upset, Nina turns to him and says she needs to go to the bathroom. The young man understands she drank too much at the party. Zen gives Nina a box and she asks, confused, what it is. He tells her he enchanted it so she can use it as she needs and promises that he and Ian will look away and not watch. Ian also needs to use the bathroom and Mina is about to go. But she is worried they will see and threatens the guys she will offend. On the third day, they fought orcs on the 15th floor. Surprised, Nina stares at the fallen orc and says they beat him. DZNK adds that they still struggle against the orcs and need to get stronger. Eon credits Mr. Jinku alone for keeping them unharmed. They now have orc meat. Nina really wants to cook it. The guys got better. This place turned them into real adventurers. 3 days later, the team decides to come back after this room. The guys are near the boss's room. Jink orders the team to get ready to fight the orc general. Nina provides rear cover while Ian attacks with magic. They step into the room and come face to face with a huge, terrifying creature. The men attack it boldly. Dizink runs ahead to attack the orc but is knocked back. Ian runs to help and finishes off the run. The orc lies dead. Nina smiles and says they killed the orc. Then she sees her. Turns a soft piece around and asks what it is. John Whisper tells Jinku that it's an orc egg. Nina reaches for it. Jink eats Nina's signature. Orcs do, and Mina hands the plate to Ian and says the orc egg is quite rare. A man approaches the group and tells them an unexpected meeting has taken place. Mr. Dink asks the newcomer who he is. The man replies that this is very rude and introduces himself as Luca, an adventurer and a master of the Big Tree clan, and says he was glad to meet the end, Chanter. Jink realized this guy was strong too, wondered if gaining an ability could let him reach the rank chest, and thought about how skilled Luca was. Jans says the Big Tree is the third largest clan in Hamel. Zink asked what Luca wanted from them. Requests for food suddenly start. Luca says he came back from the lower floors to eat but was attacked by a monster and got stuck. He admits he is ashamed but says he probably cannot reach the surface without food. Because he feels embarrassed, he offers to pay. Deezing agrees. He says payment is not necessary and asks me to tell you about the clan. Luca agrees to tell us everything he can. Jinky asks Nina to cook more orc meat and invites Yana to help. They comply and the food is ready. Hungry people rush the food and idolize Nina. Nina smiles and says she will give you money. More. Satisfied. Lucas says he ate only dried meat and bread while in the maze. Now he'll tell you about the climate. Hamel's two largest clans are Beyond Purgatory and the Messenger, and with the Big Tree they form the three main clans, though the Big Tree is smaller than the other two, and the two large clans have rigid hierarchies and an ongoing power struggle. Low-ranked participants enter the maze. Those who cannot afford the fees drop out. They act as adventurers but are regarded as traitors and cannot join any of the Hamel clans. Nina asks whether this is a matter of principle. Luca replies that these are the words left unsaid. City rules apply and those who refuse to follow them join the Big Tree. Luca helps people exiled from the two clans, which differ only in name but share the same situation. After that story, both sides thanked each other, one for the food and the other for the information. DZNK suggested Luca go with them to the exit. They were going to leave too. They're coming out. Jink enjoys the sunlight because he hasn't seen it in so long. Luca and Dezang part ways, and Luca warns Jinku that both clans are watching him, so he should be careful. Mr. Jink asks Jan and Nina how their first visit to the maze went. Nina says it was a lot of fun, and Ian says it's very effective. He asks whether Mr. Jink can form his own clan and, though unsure it will work, thinks he could try. The next day, in the Adventures Guild backyard, Dezink brought a huge pile of magic stones, and Mona nervously said it's too many, and that counting each one will take a long time. Everything is there. Spotting the orc egg she brought, she thanks Jinka for it. He asks what she thinks of him. Surprised, she says most adventurers sell it directly to merchants. The orc egg is selling for a high price, but Dizink thought he preferred meat. A man with a scar on his face appears and says a young girl should not keep eggs. Then he names him first and asks Jinka if he is a baby. Regarding the rank, the man says he is the guild leader and that clearing a boss dungeon in 3 days is quite good. The man says Jinx has completed the B rank exam requirements and will be the enchantress's opponent, and Dan tells you to withstand his attacks for a set time. Zink will remember and say something similar. The man tells Mona he is not sure he can handle it. The woman replies that even if he fails, there will be no problems. Dan says he doesn't care about a guy's class or rank, and DZNC reports that he didn't even think about it. The man replies in disbelief that young people with great powers often try to show off. Angry, Jink says he won't hold back, so you can't blame him. Mona says we can begin the exam. Dzink asks the girl what to do with the magic stones, and she says they will find a use for them. A man stands in the Hamel Branch arena wearing, for example, reslets, a necklace, a few rings, an enchanted cloak, and more. Jink realizes he has too much physical strength to test his stamina. Dan tells Jinku he can use defensive magic or a sword, and they begin. The tired man says he heard Jink defeated Snow, and now he understands how, admitting the young man wore him out while Jink stands tense, realizing it. He aimed at the wrong places and hit the sword. Dan tells Jay he was out of breath and realized he should have hurried. Because the swords were in the wrong positions, they crossed at one spot. DZNK landed a few clean hits, but it was only defense, not a rules violation. A frustrated Dan reports he lost, and the other guy passed the exam for ranked B. The man teases Jinky by saying he is about to cry, and Jinky asks him to go back because we need to talk. Weary workers complain after being told that this job would be profitable and safe. They loudly complain about who first came up with the idea of collecting these magic stones. Mr. D's ink is being praised for earning a B rank. Mona tells him the exact total of the cabled stones and knives collected. Mona, sitting with Dan across from Jinku, says that because the rank is temporary, they cannot accompany him on safe roads. Dan says D's ink does not meet an escort because he defeated Snow in the cold. Dink reminds me that Dan wanted to talk about something. Dan remembers and asks Dink what he thinks about the supply contracts. Dink says he hasn't thought about them. About it. Dan remembers Ian's abandoned brother who got into the guild after a fight. They let him go, but his father said they could have kept the child. Dan, his father's merchant who works with the guild, someone suggests Jinx negotiate with his father for an apology, but Jinku dislikes the idea because working with merchants would reduce the guild's profits, and Dan tells him that if he finds out about the man, he will be interested in the child, but there are already too many dishonest merchants in the world. So he recommends the guild hire a reliable merchant and warns against relying on the father, since his eldest son is a slave and the younger son's future is unknown, and his son. Dan believes they want us to meet him. Dink considers it and agrees to the meeting. The man instructs Dzink to arrive at this office in 2 hours. Walking down the hall, the man tells Ian he shouldn't have asked him to come, and Ian says everything is fine. They enter the room. Merchant Lauren pauses, says Ian's name, and tells him they are not here. You may begin now that everyone is here. Ian's father, Yoki, apologized and agreed to re-educate his youngest son and accept any terms. Thanks to Jan, the next one. The negotiations went better than expected. Jink thanks Ian and tells him he can spend the day with his family. Ian agrees thoughtfully. Turning Jink is met by 2 maids, Mimosa and Angie, who ask whether Ian has returned. Dzink says he is with his family now, and the girls are disappointed they won't see him today because he is so handsome. They hand Mr. D's ink a letter to the man, who is surprised because it's from Chris, and when he opens it, Jink reads a request for Mr. D to come to Brando's mansion because 2 slaves named Ariosa and Esther want to see him. A man screams in shock while Dan and Jing fight. In the royal capital of Coralta at Braldos mansion, Jink goes to Chris and says Dzink is, it turns out, of royal B, blood. Jinky stares at Chris in horror, asks what the man is talking about, and the man replies that it's no surprise he didn't know, and asks, listening, he is told that Dzinky is King Rosol's illegitimate son. He explains people found out, and now the Rosol family is in total chaos. He is in turmoil. Will, Karen, and the Bogark show up and wave to Dzink, and tell him they are with Elsa, and Esther too. The evil Dzing one shouts that he wants to see them. He opens the door and sees Elsa and Esther sitting on the floor in shabby clothes. They bow before the man. Jink, absolutely terrified, screams and demands to know who did this to them. Karen steps in and tells them this is their decision, and they insisted it was their will. He said it should not be touched and called it both punishment and an apology to you. Jink asked again about the apology. Mr. Will says he is unhappy, but he will tell you. Will explain what happened before. Holding his head, Jennings says this is all very difficult. apologizes for the trouble, and Karen, chuckling, says she liked Esther in the maid costume. Zank tells Elsa and Esther he is glad they are well, reassures them he is not angry and will not punish them, and asks them to raise their heads. Mrs. Karen orders asked her to apologize to Jink. The man is following orders. Dinkerman. He repeated himself, telling them not to worry, and since they had done nothing wrong, he anxiously asked Esther not to call him Master. Jink rushes to his brother, hugs him, and tells him they tell him there are brothers. No matter what life brings, they remain brothers. Esther begins to cry. Elsa feels the same. The Jenga are asked to care for them. He says he wants to make Esther a commoner. That is not the best option right now. On paper, he will only be a slave. And Esther refuses firmly, saying she will be her brother's slave for the rest of her life, while Elsa supports him by saying she is. Jinku dislikes their stubbornness. He notices that as soon as he found out, his stats fell into non-land. Seed. It dawned on him that the crown prince was his younger brother anyway. Mr. Will reports that King Rosalta and the crown prince have been deposed, leaving the throne vacant, and the queen has filed for divorce. Her home country has left the union. An attack on Roselle Tissenley is only a matter of time. An aristocrat is led to execution but resists, asking if they know who he is. Screaming in horror, he declares he is a non-land. In Ruth's royal capital, permission is granted to enter the dungeon. A hungry man wearing a collar sits in a dungeon under orders to sit still. In Rosalt's royal palace, the atmosphere sharply questions why they want him kept in his chambers until confusion sets in, since he is imprisoned. The king entered the room. The heir seemed delighted, and he called to his father to ask why he should be there. With fury in his eyes, the man hit his son. The father shouts that if his son hadn't spoken, nothing would have happened. The surprised son asks why his father hit him. He shouts that he does not want a son like that and keeps beating him. Horrified, the king doesn't understand what's happening and fears this is how it will end, blaming Jinka for everything. He wants to kill him, and the urge grows. These thoughts crowd the king's mind. Deasing asks Esther whether the armor suits him and says he took it when he was driven out of the city, but it is low level. Esther gratefully says that everything is fine. Nina and Jan are asked to keep her in the middle. Mace. DZNC says Esther must reach that level to win on the lower floors. Ian asks if it's normal for a young man to fight orcs right away. Esther tells him not to worry. Ian says that when he was in the non-land family, he hunted monsters with the guards and, on his way to call, hunted low-rank monsters. He's about to say Karen told him to fight in a maid costume, but it falls silent. Because the East Theat has wind magic, Jink suggests raising the levels of magic, mana, and sujutsu. Mina asks Zink if the East Theat will have to drink a lot of potion. When he confirms, she says he will also face humiliation. Zink notices it is time to go to the maze in Hamel. Mimosa, Angie, and Elsa will look after the house during this time. Elsa says you can rely on them. Esther says she senses something is wrong and advises you not to leave the... Mention that Mimosa and Angie tell you not to worry. They draw huge swords inscribed with words that say they will use the enchanted weapon if needed. At that moment, a surprised Elsa watches them. Zink and Esther enter and sit across from Mona. Mona greets Esther, and a tired Jink asks if anything happened while he was away. Mona replies yes. The manager asks the man if he knows anything about the named mother. Dezink says he has heard of it. In this world, a dead soul can become a monster. Someone who says the right words becomes the named monster and may retain memory and intelligence. And Zink begins to suspect this cannot end well. Opening. Mona responds positively, adding that the orc general Jink killed became a named monster. Dumbfounded, the young man stands as an enraged monster intends to kill Jinka. The man realized the boss's general was the named monster. Jinx asked Mona if this was true. That meant his difficulty level had risen because he had acquired a human mind on the girl's side. It tells you that it is weaker. This happened because of they are predictable, so they can be anticipated. Whenever the monster sees a woman, it loses interest in everything else. Even ranked players can overcome it. Eventually, everyone began calling the monster Duroc. The problem is that the 15th floor is too light, so by the 16th floor, lines are already piling up. Mona explains this has drawn many inexperienced adventurers to the lower floors and caused conflicts between factions. But more and more people do not return from the maze and they are in a difficult situation. so she ends her story by asking for help. Jink says he can only use enchantment and warns not to overdo it. Mona is happy and thanks him. On the 15th floor, Esther fights a monster with an air cutter. The young man throws a water balloon. Ian notices Esther is improving at magic, and they are getting faster at defeating them. Esther thanks the young man. Beaming with joy says it was a good workout and he got stronger. Jink replies, he hoped the attack power would increase too, but the level barely rose because magic was used, and Nina is more concerned that Esther still doesn't want to go to the toilet. Even though DZNK drank a lot of the potion, he understands what she thinks and knows Esther is used to putting up with it because he comes from an aristocratic society. Esther had raised Eddie's level enough, and the boys had rested enough, so Jink decided they should go down to the lower floors. Esther says they must defeat the orc general Durok to do this. His brother says the monster may be weak, but it stinks. Dzink says he will attack it himself in extreme cases. He thinks Nina should not be involved because Durok likes girls. The guys arrive on the 15th floor, meet an orc who suddenly shouts that he will kill Jing, and a surprised Esther asks why the monster set on his brother. DZNK tells the group this is the reborn Elliot. Jan asks Jinka whether he knows him. Jinka says he does and adds that Eliad is far from the nicest person. Meanwhile, the orc moves closer to the boys and repeats that it will kill Jinka. The man confidently tells the monster he will defeat it. The monster then launches a fireball. His attempt to use magic fails. This causes no harm to the orc because he only has first-level fire magic. The monsters. The pupils change into heart shapes when it sees a woman. That is, not quite a woman. This is not Nina, but Esther Youngman, who looks like a girl. Jink has shifted its focus from the monster to Esther. J. Seizing the moment, Tink wounds the monster and yells at it not to get distracted. The orc yells the man's name and the fight continues. Furious, Jink cuts the monster in half lengthwise. The monster falls, and Jink is surprised by the encounter. Nina sees an egg come out of the monster and feels annoyed. Yan and Jink refuse to take it. Esther tells her brother the crown prince has fallen. He assumes the prince was executed. Jinker replies that an undead soul risks becoming a monster. Elliot was also undead. The souls of the monsters and Hamel's maze are trapped there forever. He will be resurrected many times and will keep earning experience points and items while continuing to kill adventurers. After beating the boss, the group is happy and decides to go to the most popular place or cave on the 20th floor. Ian sees that this place is very crowded. Zink says you can find various crystals, emeralds, and diamonds here. He offers to earn money. Esther and Nina beam with happiness. They decide to mine ore. Jing gives everyone pickaxes but asks them not to overdo it. Mining ore takes a lot of effort, so the team will collect crystals. He notices there are no valuables nearby, so they should try somewhere else. Esther asks why the guy thinks that, and he replies he used his appraisal skill, so he can say there are many emeralds there. Jink praises his friend, saying he didn't even notice the grade skill being used. They reach another area and find there are many emeralds here. Nina is delighted to find so many green stones here. Esther is pleased with the discovery too. The watching Jink thinks it's all just fun and that they are still like children. Children watch as he gathers a handful of emeralds with a sinister look, enjoying himself in his own way. Asked if he will dig, Jinku says yes, and adds that he wants to try something, then stands near the stones ready to collect. Jinquins practices earth magic and creates a golem from the earth's remains. Esther watches and admires her brother. Jink says holding it takes mana, and though he can't control it well yet, he figures, learn how to use the golem, use it as a shield and to get past traps. Jink guessed that the golem could also be used to mine more ore. Jan asks Jinka what is making the noise. People are standing nearby. Two sides argue over whose place it is and who should leave. He isn't sure they're acting this way because something wasn't shared. Since they're adults, he hurries to finish the job. The fun treasure hunt, it is ruined. They finally reach the 21st floor. This place is called Step. The group looks around in surprise and says this place feels very different from the rest of the maze, as if they are outside. Jing says green cows live here and their meat is delicious. Esther notices Jing prefers orc meat. Nina asks her brothers if they have tried it before. The eldest brother replies they actually tried it when they were aristocrats. This food is a delicacy because there are only a few places where you can find it. Buy it. Nina eagerly asks whether they will hunt cows, and Ian says he is hungry. Jink recalls Mona warning that many people do not return from the maze, but they seem to be doing fine. Suddenly, the group is attacked by terrifying creatures resembling giant ants. Yelling that the cow's meat is delicious, Jink charges the cow with his sword. He hands the guys a large piece of meat, saying he thinks it will be enough. Nina says it's her turn and Esther offers to help. The guys ate and say they really enjoyed it. Ian explains that a white cow and a minotaur also exist. Many monsters resemble cows. The white cow's meat is very similar to the green cow's, and it also produces delicious milk. The minotaur's meat doesn't taste good, and its axe is too heavy to use. Jin confirms to Esther that he has raised his wind magic level, so he might be able to form a wind tornado now. Jink hears a sound and looks around. One man pulls the injured man and says the exit is close. Jin asks if everything is all right. The men say it's better if the guys don't go there. The young man asks what happened. One man replies that they are ants. Ants live here, and the men were unlucky to come across a group of them. When Dzink asks if everything is fine, they say they were the only ones to survive while the others remained in Antil. The young man thinks he has never had to fight ants before. Jinx asks the men to describe the ants while he casts healing magic. A man says there are not many ants, but they line up in ranks, which makes them hard to defeat. When asked about their weaknesses, he says their skin is tough. They fear fire. Jink knows they're unlucky. Since he's bad at fire magic, they mostly used water and air magic. The ants fiercely protect the queen. Demand explains that the guys will have to bring many magicians and travel with the clan to reach the 24th floor. The man who was treated thanks them and says he felt better, and another says they will go and advises the guys. Don't count on success. Mr. D's Inc. decides they must get to the 24th floor as soon as possible, but he must not forget about security. The guys are on the 24th floor heading to the Antel. Suddenly they felt a vibration, and the unit called out to Jinka in fear. Ants suddenly swarmed near the children, who ran as fast as they could to get away. Features. A girl boldly rushes in to fight the ants, but she fails. She's hurt. Jank thinks about they can do a lot with the type of magic available. There are at least 5,000 ants. It advises not saving anyone, because that would make it possible to avoid death. Believes Jan is right, but the kids, especially Nina, can't bear the guilt. The young man shouts that they will fight and use potions to even the odds. The men charge into battle. Jink feels their lives are his responsibility. As their leader, he must hold on to keep everyone alive. Everyone needs to get out of here quickly. This is possible. DZNC says they will buy time and take the answer away. If it is very hot, they will run away, and people do so gratefully. They use a water cyclone and an air tornor. They fight, using whatever they can. Dzing drinks the potion and finds the ants keep coming. Ian uses an air cyclone. Jink realizes he can't use fire but still has enough mana. Yang is somehow holding up and the kids need a break to recover. However, Dzink calls Esther and Nina over, creates a wall of water, and asks, "Do not worry." Dzink advises the children to drink the potion to recover. One guy can't stop thinking that if they keep this pace, they'll lose their lives. He thinks they must kill the queen for the guys to win. It's huge and far away, and Jin is thinking about how to reach it, studying it closely. Noticing individuals in a different form, he suspects this is the commander of the end. Jink decides to give them some orc meat and tosses a piece. The ants were clearly distracted by this. Buying time, the man runs to the DZNK, attacks the commander, and cuts off his head. The ants were frightened. The man orders Ian to scatter the orcs' bodies with wind magic, attack the commanders if possible, and use ranged magic. Nina and Esther offered to help as well. The children bravely volunteered to assist Ian and clear a path to the queen with ranged magic. Dzing agrees. He asks for cover and says that once he reaches the queen, he will destroy her. Roy her. Ian tosses the meat the way he should. The ants are moving up, and Esther and Nina operate an air cyclone. That guy is a real man. Pfizer fights ants. Ian runs toward the ants. Jink also uses a water cyclone to approach the queen. Now he stands directly across from the ants' leader. Jink sizes up the situation and decides it is. It is unlikely the blade will do enough damage, even if her skills are lacking. Not very good. The character uses a fireball. The queen attacks. Jink, understand, says her attacks are rough and easy to dodge. The man asked how to damage it. Then it suddenly occurred to me. Seeing him, Jink realized he could use Dan's tactics. Dan understands that a large body, he will not be able to turn in a small space, so he should move to control the queen. Jink decided to target her leg joint, and he asks you not to interfere. Ants try to get closer to the D-Zinc, but Jan orders the boys to keep them away from Mr. Jingle. Supplies are running out during D-Zing attacks. The queen, intent on causing damage. He succeeded the queen after she lost part of her leg. The queen collapsed to the ground, almost legless and practically unable to move. Jink realizes that if she loses her sense of touch and her legs, she will be helpless. I can do that. The man pounces on the queen, destroying her completely. The answer, after the queen was killed, they ran away. Esther praises her older brother, who says he is glad they were not injured. Jink nervously thinks about what happened this time, knowing that if he had made even one mistake, their bodies would still be lying in the maze. Mr. D-Sink apologizes for being overly careless. Ian said he was very glad they had. They survived, and Esther reports that in the end it was a success with many drops falling from the ants. The group decides to gather everything using wind magic and return outside. Esther asks her brother whether he will receive a temporary rank for defeating the A rank and queen. D-Zing doubts it because it's too fast. He defeated the queen but only managed to win 1. After a few days at the Adventure Guild's game branch, Jink realized the guild would only lecture him for risking the enchanter's life for nothing. Mono told Jinku, annoyed, that he was fighting a group of ants. She also said that Jink helped her rank adventurers from Harp, and they give 3 platinum coins as a reward. D-Zing converted this into prices and set it at 300,000 yen. He asked if it was too much. Mona replied they had been saved from evil ants, and that everything was at market value. She explained this was the price of life. They understood that without D-Sync they would have been killed. The guy thanked the girl for what she told her. Golden and upset, Mona says everyone is dying and insists Jink is a valuable enchanter, refusing to hear about his death. She admits asking him to help those people and apologizes for putting Jink at risk. He says he wanted to go there himself and that it isn't her fault. Leaving, the girl says she will call the guild leader, who really wants him to live. Nina notices Manu is angry, and D-Zing says she was worried and he is too. Dan enters the room pleased and says he heard that D-Zing defeated the ants. Again, the man criticizes the guy, saying he overestimated himself, put his friends in danger and saved people, and that if he wants to die, he can return to. Ashtray shouts at the man for talking to his brother like that, ignoring that Dan is the head of the guild, and D-Zing stops him, saying Dan is right and Ashtray should be more careful. The man tells D-Zing to rethink his behavior and decides one lecture is not enough. Standing, he says he has an important message for the young enchanter. D-Zing looks at Dan in surprise. Dan says the guild leader from Colt contacted him recently, and the aristocrats from Rosol were on their way to call on him. He reports that 4 people dressed as merchants came to request an escort, and discovered that one of them was an aristocrat. Dan tells him that King Rosalta wants the D-Zing back. Esther says they will not. Jink asked why he had revealed it, since it was a secret. Dan replied that the guild could legally have kept their privacy no matter who demanded the Zink, but they turned themselves in. The man insists everything should have been done according to the law, notes the guild stays neutral in international conflicts, and says this is their problem. Jink made a note and decided to inform the state king. A question was asked about their names, but no one ever found out. Jink expected a royal delegation to arrive if they planned to make him crown prince, but they had secretly slipped in. His name was Marquis Bodinil, the second most important noble after the governor-general, known for his harsh treatment of commoners. Dan reassures Dzenke that Bodinil does not know he is in Hamel, so Dzenke is now looking for him in the cap. After these words, the man considers writing a letter to Prime and the Holy Scripture, and transferring the servants from his house to Brando's man. Mona asks Jink if his research was hampered by the Harp members saying they encountered ants while trying to leave the place where messengers and those out of custody were fighting, and he replies it did not really harm the work. But they stopped mining when they saw the coral and moved on. The girl concludes that even an S-ranked Jinku is suffering from this. Perhaps she should complain to the heads of both clients. The guy doesn't mind. He knows the guild suffers from them too and gets it. Getting up, he says they cause a lot of trouble, then finishes by saying he is done with them and tells them not to take such risks again. Meanwhile, In the messenger clan house, a sinister man with long blonde hair drinks straight from the bottle, demanding to know who the enchanter complained about. They can't ignore it because it's an S-rank clan, not a weak one. The man keeps shouting that the fourth squad is short-handed and he can't order Harvard to return. Because he went with the third squad into the labyrinth, if he learns about this, everyone will be in danger. So the man says action is needed, tells the others to stay away, and asks not to be contacted while in custody. Until Harvard returns, in the out-of-prison clan's house, the man at the head of the table says the guild complained about their clan and the messengers for interfering with the Jinku, and explains he does not care about territories because there are more important things to do. The man, with an intimidating look, reports that the Nad's Ark Kingdom has ordered them to kill the D-Zink. Out of prison is a large adventurer clan based in Hamel. Their leaders from the neighboring country of Nods sent scouts to Cal. The man adds that Princess Melissa is having more and more trouble raising her son. The law reached Nazar because Elliot had cancelled the deal. He says the man will be hard to bring to Nadsar and will remain in Kola, making him a major threat to their country. Members of Out of Prison decide to kill the D-Zing. Seated at the head of the table, the man decides he will kill the Jink himself, because all enchanters are quite capable. He will pose as a member of the Messenger's clan, and if something goes wrong, the Jink will assume they are messengers, which will damage the guy's relationship with the plan and harm the Call Kingdom. A few days later, Jink says the battle with the ants greatly raised their levels. Ian's wind magic exceeded 100, the D-Zink's radar level rose, and Ian says the enchanted items he gave them were very useful. Jink happily announces that Nina is 13 and asks Esther to consider her an older sister. D-Zing says they have grown stronger, so you can go to the 26th floor, and once you reach a safe place, the ants will no longer bother them. It gets cold on the 26th floor, so Jink bought warm clothes for the kids, and they put them on with no special differences. At our Elzalt and Coda, the climate has no 4 seasons, staying temperate year-round. Aside from that, this time they will not extract minerals and will focus on the level. They're on their way. On the 26th floor, they find it too cold, so D-Zink stops the wind, raises the temperature, creates an air curtain, and tells the team not to waste time since in the boss dungeon there will be no time for long breaks. These shots need to be rushed, even though it's difficult. Ferocious tigers charge the men and the fight begins. Jink fires water arrows and Young wields an air cutter, and Ian explains that hunting it would be difficult, and they wouldn't be able to eat them because of the weather. Zink notices his water arrow looks like sherbet. Nina, surprised, asks what it is. The guy has an idea he thinks the girl will like. The group finally reaches the 30th floor, a dungeon with a boss. Yang says it took them 2 days to improve their physical strength. Before the boss fight, Jink creates a golem from a pile of metal left over from out there. The boys stare at him in surprise. Esther leaves. She asks her brother what it is. He says he wants to try it. The guys take off their winter clothes. Wear lighter clothes because it is warmer in the dungeon near the boss. Appears in front of them. Jinx shows that he bites and needs to be careful. He adds that the monster is hard to defeat because it cannot be dealt with directly. The battle goes on. Jink increases his magic. After a long wait, the man creates a water tornado. He knows that if it doesn't work, he'll have to blind the monster with an arrow. But unexpectedly for Jinka, the monster falls, and Jinka, smitten, notices they were able to beat him while Jink, still in shock, admits he thought it would be more difficult because of the statistics. Esther says that when the level rises, the enchanter's skill rises too. Zink says a safe zone comes next. Nina is relieved because she can finally rest. When the guys enter a new room, the people already sitting there stare in disbelief and decide from their evil looks suggest the men are either messengers or recently released prisoners. Lion introduces himself as Lion of the Big Tree Clan and reminds Jinku that the man had fed him some orcs, then says it will be hard to rest near the messengers or outside the prison, so they are unlikely to go there. There, Dizink gives people milk from the Bella cow. They accept it gratefully. The children, after they drank the milk, they fell asleep right away. They must be very tired, since even adults can hardly tolerate the cold zone. Jink asks the man how long they've been here, and he replies that they're the third squad supplying the first and second, and they also stay in contact with the surface, so they can't leave. He says 3 other squads from different clans support the first and second squads on the lower floors. DZNC replies that he understands and notes that sometimes they stay here for up to a month and may give off an unpleasant smell. The man, sounding confused, says he understands what Jin is thinking but can't help it because drinking water is essential, so they can't use it for washing. Dzink replies he can trade the water for information about the lower floors. Lion says the 31st through 35th floors are a tropical jungle zone, but many adventurers are stranded in the cold zone, so now even the guilds know little about what's going on here. They say one clan is trying to sell information about the territory. Jink knows that making a map and a jungle guide could earn them good money. The guide gives. He hands over the water and thanks Lion, who replies that he is grateful and wishes him good luck. On the 31st floor, Dzink says it is the jungle zone, and Esther notes that, unlike the cold zone, it is hot and humid. Dzink says their goal is to explore the area, collect information, and make a map so they can sell the information and earn a lot of money. A man asks the others to invest the full amount. Nina says she'd be happy despite the difficulty, but the unbearable heat is very annoying. Dzink agrees with her. He picks up the jar and says it is a special white cow's milk sorbet from Dzank. Nina, surprised, asks what it is. The man says she wanted to know what sorbet is, so he made it secretly in a safe zone. After tasting it, Nina says it is very tasty, cold and sweet, and Jan is left speechless by Dzank's sherbet. Dzink explains you should add sugar to warm milk and then cool it to be sure. He says the white cow's milk is saturated, so no cream is needed. Yang tells Jinku he can sell his invention because it is a new dish. The man says he read about it in a book at the school library. Nina and Esther praise. They found a way to cool down. Wrap a piece of slime in a cloth and put it in your pocket or on your head. It will be cooler then. Jan explains that if he mixes sherbet with a cooler, it can be sold. Jink watches this and thanks Ian for being a real man. Merchant Dzink tells the team to get ready and stay within radar range. The children are surprised to be exploring the jungle. Yang points out to Jinku, who was speaking, a gesture that asks for silence. Jan and Jink saw the tense men arguing about killing Jink. They said, they can say the king and Princess Melissa also want to kill the enchanter as soon as possible. Continue by saying that all the rumors about him may be true, and that the head of the guild said. Jink is tense and visibly shocked by what is happening. Ian is in the scene. He says this because he knows the head of the guild is Dan. Is Dan related to Out of Prison? It appears to be a spy from the Enad's Ark Kingdom beyond the confinement, and Dzink says it's unlikely everyone in the clan is a spy, but some of them may be in the maze chasing the guys. Alarmed, Nina says guild leader Dan may be a traitor. Dzink asks his friends to act normally and not let on that they know about the assassination being planned. He turns to Nina and says what Jan and Esther already understood, and it is easy to see through her. Dzink asks the girl to be more careful. Nina shouts angrily that this is very rude. She's already 13 and you can rely on her, everyone's here. Pora is surprised and asks whether the scouts have been released from prison. An indignant Dan replies that he hasn't understood anything for 10 years. The men stare at the man with a stony face. Jink asks what they will do if the kingdom is not involved. Then he says he will inform the state king. Mona says she won't let it happen if Nadzor tries to attack. Dan says the spy's release isn't the only reason to get rid of them, and the guild remains neutral. The man explains his decision to go with the guys to the maze because they need stronger evidence to take down a large clan like Out of Prison, and he will be an important witness to help catch them in the act. Jink wonders why Dan wants to go, but in the end, Dan agrees to go with him. Dan. The man is asked again if he really knows nothing, and he answers yes with regret. Esther says they'll go together, but they need to get some food. Dan asks Esther whether she trusts him, says he will not stand in the way if she does not, and tells me he is already on his way, and that they will leave tomorrow. As he walks, the man thinks he has just left prison and speaks as if to his brother. His brother once suggested it to him. Dan would like to be like him. Tyre D's Inc. announced that the letter for the king was finally ready. Opening a drawer, he took out a truth serum used by the Gofflin family that he had taken with him before his exile. Perhaps the day has come. Jink decides to go through with it, but Jinkuro's feelings get in the way. Still, the man understands he must act, because the Easthite and others depend on it. The next day, everyone is assembled. Jink said it was usually crowded, but thanks to Dan, they were able to get through. The man tries to disguise himself with words that people outside the prison could use to recognize him. Already on the 14th floor, Dan gets tired, asks if they always go through the maze at this pace, and urges us not to rush because Asia is already over 40. Desink tells them they will meet outside the prison next, and it's time to make a sound. Stop. Nina has set a beautiful table. They eat and praise her because they think she is delicious. Dan sits apart and gets mad at them. Jink asks the man whether he likes surprises, and the man pulls out a jar of truth serum. He explains what it is and says he wants to use it on all participants outside prison. Desink explains the truth serum must be mixed with water. The guy says he will challenge the man once they drink it. Ian and Esther are confused. Jink explains they will keep going until everyone is drunk, but the young enchanter says the serum is very concentrated and does not know how much to dilute it, so he will explain. Impaired, Esther yells at Zink not to take it because the wrong dose will make him sick. But DZNG says he has an antidote outside the prison so they can counteract the serum. The guy says this will be his first time drinking it, and adds that if Dan wins, Jink will give him 1 platinum coin and let him eat the same food with them, while the man doubts this and says they must be sure. Because this is not a toy, Jink replies seriously that Dan is the guild leader and has reasons to avoid prison, and they cannot trust the man because they do not know him well. Dan understands what is happening and asks again whether they think he is connected to this clan. Dink responds positively even when others are rude. Disgruntled Dan glares at the man and warns him not to underestimate how much he can drink. Anything. The guys stand beside Desinka and Dan, who are a drinking habit. They keep drinking it. Dan scowls, chuckles, and asks the man if he wants more. Suddenly the man begins hearing accusing voices, and his condition keeps worsening. He stands somewhere with his feet in a black liquid. The place feels strange. Root-like growths start on his legs and spread over his body to his face. A voice appealing to Dan like a brother asks why Dan did not stop him, and then he dies. A terrifying face suddenly appears right in front of the man's face, shouting that something happened because of Dan. He knows he should have stopped his brother, but he was glad to take part in out of prison. The man felt sad to part, but happy for his brother. After a long time, they met again, and the out-of-prison participant was disappointed. Dan learned that his brother had died in an accident while exploring the maze. Talented members of the out-of-custody stake often go missing, but Dan had dismissed that as a rumor until Jink convinced him it was true. The gang outside the prison had become too large and wouldn't be able to do anything. The terrifying thought that many people had died because of him consumed his mind. And thanks to Jinku, he accidentally learned about the crimes outside the prison. So this time he decided not to run away. Dan shouts that he won't let them die and won't let Jink and his friends be killed. The man opened his eyes in horror and found himself awake. Dan gets up and says he lost consciousness. The guys look at him, tired and sad. Madness. The man asks if he did something foolish under the serum. Suddenly, Jink drops to his knees and begs Dan to forgive him for what he did. The master apologizes too, and the man says he is to blame because he withheld information about getting out of prison. They realize the theory was wrong. The team considers what those words mean for what the guild said. Dan asks whether they actually said that. Said so. He claims he knows nothing about it. Zink suggests someone from the past may be linked to this clan. Then Dan remembers. He says 5 years ago, a member of Out of Prison took a test to gain rank and left him with a large scar. Dan says he remembers his smile, but until that moment, the man never thought it had anything to do with it. And Dzink tells them they have no choice because they need to find the killer and find out everything. The empathy gift is a rare ability that can be used on an opponent who was previously severely wounded. It can be used once every 10 days because it consumes a great deal of mental energy. You can use it to interact with your opponent's thoughts and feelings as well as collect all available information about them. At that time, something was happening in the jungle area. The contestant out of custody yells something, and the others realize he is trying to get into their heads. Ahead of the guild leader, one participant asks whether anyone has found out they use empathy. Others ask how that could be possible. He replies that the guild leader may have attacked mentally, and the participant is annoyed that it looks that way. It seems someone learned of the plan to kill Jinka. He orders all assassins in the maze to gather because they must kill Jinka. The participant asks someone else to calm the person who tried to get into the guild leader's head, and he is furious that they managed to attack instantly. Suddenly, wyverns appear above the participants, huge dragon-like creatures that broke out of prison. Everyone is shouting for him to get up. The leader tells one member to leave Jay behind and go, but the member refuses because Jay has a vital gift of sympathy that they need to steal information from the guild leader. The leader shouts that his opponents would have destroyed him anyway. They run off, leaving Jay alone. Left alone, the man begins to cry, his eyes hidden under his hood, while a wyvern stands behind him. It grabs Jay by the mouth. Other members of Out of the DL are present. Prisoners who had been with Jay ran away in fear because wyverns were also flying after them. Jink and the others reach the 26th floor. A man says it's as cold as ever. They agree to do everything the same as last time. Shivering from the cold, Dan urges Jinka to summon the monster. The guy still doesn't understand me. Dan says you can summon a monster that is resistant to cold and can pull a sled. It's also the most sensible idea to summon a fire monster that looks like a Salomon. Jink says there's nothing he can do. An exasperated Dan asks how they passed this level back then. The young enchanter explains he first made an air curtain, makes one now, and hands out lanterns to give everyone warmth. Jink continues, saying physical strength and fire will handle the rest. Dan asks whether the man is serious. He says the level of fire magic has risen, so he's doing better now. That's it. Disappointed, Dan realizes there is no other choice. Dezing tells Dan the man is better than yesterday. The man tells Dan to focus on keeping the magic and asks him to look around. The team reaches the 30th floor and battles a monster. Dan says Tokuro Kanth was easily defeated. These Incorporated suggests we stop here and think about our future strategy. Dan asks, surprised, whether they will go to the safe zone. The young enchanter says the monster will be reborn in an hour. If it appears sooner, experience points and drops will still be useful. Nina has prepared the food and says the white cow's milk and sherbet are ready. Esther suggests that Dan eat his portion too if he wants. Dan says Esther is still growing and he needs to eat. The man asks about the future plan, and Jink replies they will explore the tropical floor and its lore outside confinement, saying he has already explored it and the man wants to know if he can use the local territory. Dzink explains that the trees make visibility poor here and the enemy can't see anything, so it's worth improving the radar setup. Dan says even the guild does not know everything about this place. He adds that the freed prisoners are good at surveillance and scouting, but he does not know what skills they have, and Jinking urges everyone to move to the safe zone. Choosing to act in secret, they do the same as before. The guys exchange glances with some disgruntled people. On the 7th day on the tropical floor, Dan says you can put a bathtub and other items in the storage area. Otherwise, the men would be dirty now. Esther adds that this is why his brother took the bathroom and sounds concerned. Young wonders if they will get out of prison. He knows it is unlikely they will call off their plan to kill, but Zink points out the chance is not zero. Realizing he was distracted for a week, he doesn't feel like himself, but his increased vigilance has boosted his radar level. Deciding to check it out, he puts on a lot of jewelry. When Dan asks what the Jink does, the man says they are accessories enchanted for radar, and that he can detect anything across a large radius. So Dzink asks the others to stay with him, because using the skill leaves him unarmed. He focuses and light fills the space around him. He senses where living things are and reads their minds. Trees appear before him, first leaves, then mushrooms, then frogs, and finally clan members. Dazing says 4 people who are not in custody are at the safe zone entrance and are blocking the passage so the group cannot leave. The people they saw earlier are not on this floor and were monitoring the situation. Dzink says the murder plot is still underway, and Dan warns their conversations could be overheard. According to him, testing Dan's theory requires the hearing skill. These incidents suggest people are saying bad things about Nadsar. After another check, the guys found that outside prison, people most likely follow them with their eyes rather than their ears. Dzink looks wary, and Nina asks him what's wrong. He replies that the clan's murder has increased. Jing explains what must be done under his plan, since they keep their distance and follow the men. The man thinks they can dress the clown. A young enchanter offers to turn it into bait. He says he and Nina will pretend to be in love to lure the participants out of prison. Esther asks Zink if the plan is dangerous because he is very worried about his brother. Dan does not want to admit it, but goes along anyway. He admits that because of the enchantment, if Nina levels up, she will become stronger than him, and the man's plan is to start by pouring water while pretending to train. Water magic that contains a poison developed by the non-land family. When it evaporates, it emits a gas that impairs thinking. The guys drink the antidote first, but it has a faint smell, so Nina cooks food to mask it, and they use wind magic to spread the scent. They only need to wait for the clan to be released from prison. Nina admits that they also fear clan members want them dead, so to protect the guys they will have to kill the participants of out of prison. Jink knows killing a monster is viewed differently from killing a human, especially since Nina comes from a village and not from an aristocratic society. He reassures the girl that their goal is to capture them alive, asks her to leave everything to him and just defend herself, and Nina, relieved, thanks him and says she will try. With everything ready, Jink decides to begin. With a sweet look, Nina feeds Jinka. She says her dishes are, as always, very tasty, and adds that he would like to marry her. Right now, Ian chuckles, Dan looks stunned and asks what they are doing, and Esther is quiet and surprised. Ian says he is also using radar now so he can hear everything clearly. Jink hugs Nina, touches her cheek, and says, "Not everyone gets to eat delicious food and bathe out in the jungle, and they haven't seen women for a long time." The clan has already spotted Mr. Jinka and is closing in, full of anger, hunger, and envy. When the water mixed with the substance spilled, they started thinking hard. This will help them. Surprised by the idea, Dan still decides they deserve it. Nina gently wipes Jink's face and tells him he has sauce on it. He then whispers to the girl that the clan men jump out from behind the bush to attack them from the rear. Menacing figures appear and shout at Jinku to stop showing off, threatening to take his food and the woman, while Nina and Jinku look at them wearily. People are closing in on Jing, saying he is finished. They cheered and shouted that they'd finally kill him and escape, and he realized Jink and the others hadn't noticed the attack. People are shouting that they do not need to touch Nina because they will still need her, and they claim Dzink has a pretty face, so they will need him too, leaving Jink outraged that the poison has made them lose their minds. People are attacking. Jink begins moving. A fireball injures Nina. A fight breaks out, and one man's leg is cut open. He screams in pain. A man grabs Nina, pins her to the ground, and Zink notices. A furious-looking man tells the girl not to resist because she must be punished, and adds that Nina can blame Jinka for everything. Since it's his fault, Zink will help Nina. She asks, in an uncharacteristic series, that you not worry. Worried, she kicks the man in the groin, throws him aside and calls him a scoundrel, and no. He knocks out 2 teeth. The girl screams in horror, calling him a nasty pervert. Meanwhile, another guy is he approaches her, but she knocks him back with a ball of water. Nina doesn't stop there. Grabbing him by the head, she knocks him in the face and fights off the men, ordering them not to come closer. Watching this, Jink realizes that Nina can also frighten. A man with a blindfold over one eye shouts that they are just 2 kids, and they should not have to deal with him for long, while Ian sneaks up behind and slices his head open. Dan and Esther rush to attack, and the frightened people are stunned to see that Jinka and Nina have backup. The men are fighting the clan with all their strength. Dan cuts open a man's head. He notices that, thanks to Jinku, his body feels much lighter. The guys end up winning. Think offers to bring people to their senses, and Nina says she does not want to touch them. The man apologizes that she had to deal with it herself and says he understands that they will now do everything themselves. Jink says she and Ian will set up camp and that she wants to bathe because the girl can no longer tolerate being touched by dirty men. And Dan is not surprised since he knows this is a shock at her age. Conscious people are sitting in front of the desync. The man says he has many questions, but if they are answered honestly, they can be resolved easily. He offers them some truth serum and tells them to drink it. The man in front of him spits at Zink and insults him to show his disdain. Esther steps forward and stabs the man's leg with a sword, and he screams in pain. Jink asks his brother what they should do with the man's task eternity, suggesting they tear off the fingers one by one or put out the eyes, saying the most important thing is to leave the tongue so it can speak, and the people around them grew scared and shouted at the guys to stop. DZ's NK explains that they are dealing with the non and family, and he was taught torture since childhood. The man says they hurt people so they do not die quickly. Gina asks how many more there are, but no one answers, so a man walks up to one of the... A clan member puts his hand to his head, preparing to do something. Jink uses fireman. Magic says he will slowly raise the temperature. The man explains the skin is thin, so the heat will soon reach the skull and burn the face. Zink adds a clan member can die from pain shock, and there are many other ways to kill them. The man with the intimidating look says it doesn't matter to him whether the target is a goblin or a person. People in this clan are terrified. The dink burned his head, and he shouted at him to let go, promising he would tell everything. Jink decides Nina doesn't need to see this. The others use the same thing. L says he will not get away that easily, because the prison exit is guarded. Dan appears in a stern video and tells the clan members they are now traitors for the guild, and when they leave the maze, they will be judged and their clan will be disqualified. He warns they will be tortured and executed, and says they should stay silent to avoid worsening the situation. The interrogation continues. Thanks to Dzink's efforts, the out-of-prison participants are no longer indignant. The clan will not sacrifice itself for Nadzar, because the kingdom of Nadzar created them to scout and rob the stake. Sell items taken in the maze in bulk to the merchant Nadzar, who is also a scout. Recruit skilled adventurers to weaken the stake, and kill those adventurers after their missions. A man with an odd hairstyle and a facial scar says they used the gift of sympathy to follow Dan's thoughts and extract information. The man's mental attack made Jay, who was trying to follow his thoughts, go crazy. And Desync wonders when the out-of-prison contestant entered Dan's head. The young enchanter remembers the truth serum and assumes the mental taka happened then. Dan asks the man with the strange hairstyle whether Jay was hurt, and the man, swinging aggressively, asks if it is his own. It's his fault. Dan hits himself. Singh tries to calm him, saying he had been too relaxed and that now people can only be judged because it is all over. The man apologizes. If you bring people upstairs, everyone will learn the truth and their time in prison will end. Dan asks how they can get them upstairs. Jink grins and promises they'll figure it out. Something is out now. The following is happening on the second floor. Other participants who are out of prison have dealt with the Vervants. One of them tells the others that in 10 seconds it will be 2 hours. Another Vervain attacks them. The contestant asks if the men from the second squad were caught, but the man stays calm because he trusts his gift of foresight and is not afraid of the enchanter. Golems carry participants out of the prison in large cages. Several people crowded into each room, and Dan watches and says he now understands why Jinquan had to use golems. The young enchanted decided to build 2 golem prisons, one for those who confessed immediately with a blanket on the cage floor, and one for those who resisted with small spikes. Food is divided into goblin meat, which smells terrible, and delicious orc meat. For those who immediately confessed everything, the guys give the non-land families medicine so their heads do not spin. The second group envied the first. The team was destroyed. Jan notices that Jinx has thought it all out. The young man replies that although this is the second squad, they still have rank, so if they had not done this, there would have been problems. Jinx says that although it was difficult, he gave the clan members storage underwear, but when the smell became unpleasant, I had to use an air curtain, which caused trouble. Esther proudly says it was his brother's idea and suggests learning from torture. Jinx says, nothing will work without a large amount of mana and still needs to support the golems. But Dan advises against learning it. Jan sees something, and Zink mentions the first squad and their intent to kill. They're coming this way. Dan asks what the plan is this time and what he should do. The young enchanted reports that based on information from the prisoners, the biggest threats in the first squad are leader Phobos and Neville, and Jink says that if they defeat those two, they can be considered to have defeated everyone in terms of strength. His level is better suited to the second squad, but his valuable evaluation ability only works when his teammates are in his line of sight. Phobos, leader of the first squad, can use up all the Manga in a few seconds, but C can save it to use later in battle. DZNK explains that participants outside the prison can attack from a distance, so use your waters to the fullest, and sends Esther and Nina ahead of the prison. Backed by magic, Jink says Ian and Dan are attacking with magic, and urges that they quickly defeat the magician to prevent a remote attack. They agree. A man holds the glasses and explains they are enchanted for testing. Using them, the team will learn the enemy's skills. The first squad is ready for battle. The guild that was supposed to stay away is not supporting the plan. Enchanter, Jing says he knows everything about the second squad and tells the first squad to give up now. Arguing their life as slaves will be easier if the clan cooperates. The men stand ready to fight, and Phoba mimics Jing, saying he had hoped to leave the maze and live in peace, and then declaring the man is finished. The Jink attacks, unleashing a massive wave that knocks the first squad down. One participant begins to rise. These incorporated uses an air cutter. A disgruntled Phobos wipes his face and says he could have predicted this. Everything happened too suddenly. The first squad moves into battle. Dan shouts for them to attack. Attack! They fight while Deezing flies with a sword. At Phobos, they wanted to defeat him. He dodges every time. The young enchanter realizes his attacks fail because Phobos anticipates them and faints. Dzink says the second squad was right, since Phobos is a poor fencer. He remembers Esther and Nina. Discontented members of the first squad move closer to them. Suddenly they fall, leaving the children standing outside the prison. Phoba asks in surprise what it is, and a happy Desync realizes the plan worked. It is jelly made from boiled slime that he sprayed with a large white wave. The first squad, caught in a trap, yells that it's not fair, and 2 replies with a stony face that she was the one who wanted to kill her brother. Esther operates an air cutter, and Nina uses an air cyclone to attack Denon. Tells Jinku they are done. Jin-Ah fights Phobos and gets him drunk to test if he will save his friends. Nervous. Phobos believes that if he looks away, the dink will be gone. Someone is going to kill him. He's at a loss and doesn't know what to do. The men close in on Phobos as he looks around. In horror, Jink orders him to use divination and asks what the man sees in the future. Exhaling, Phobos says it seems so. People in cages shout that the man gave up too easily and that they will give any information. Esther speculates they already have enough prisoners and witnesses, and he suggests tying those people to trees to be eaten by monsters. DZNC replies they will still be useful, and tells Phobos the best cage has been prepared for him. Phoebe sits in a cage. Desync says they're going to the 30th floor safe zone and it will be cold there. The man tells Phoba not to worry because he'll give him warm clothes. He thinks him. Jink says he will give him water so he can drink as much as he wants, and angry people from the other side shout they will remember this. The guys are with the locked people. If your cells are carried by golems, go to the 30th floor. Ian tells them they'll reach the safe zone soon and asks how they plan to explain this to the other clients. Dzink offers to speak plainly, but this could lead to a clash with the scouts still there. He says they should show everyone this is the right way and try to make friends with other clans. Dan joins the conversation and says he will explain everything himself, since anything he says will be checked, because he is the head of the guild. And Jink thanks him and asks everyone not to provoke other clans. A startled man asks them what happened. Then they ran into Leon of the Big Tree. Jink greets him and says the story is long. Ben tells Leon he'll explain everything now. Leon realizes this is the guild leader. The man says Dzink was hunted outside the prison. Dan says they had to do this because the clan members are murderers, and the main criminals are performers. People in cages wonder what will happen to them. A crowd stands before them, watching. One person from the third squad is in the crowd. Phobos spots him, guesses he has slipped into the other plans and chuckles, realizing the third squad will handle everything for them. They can't let Jinku move on, and this floor is their last chance. Phobos grows nervous. Suddenly, Zink turns and notices something. Phobos asks Zink to tell you. He takes his time. The young enchanter shouts that they will die too. Phobos's head is full of thoughts of the decent. Death. Suddenly, the crowd turns to dust. A participant who was out of custody did this, shouting that all witnesses should turn to ashes. He demands the witnesses and the desync be burned alive. People disappear screaming. Deezing creates a water wall. A member of Out of Prison is horrified and accuses the young enchanter of destroying their clan's honor. Jink wonders if this person is sane. After all, he burned his comrades and those gathered at the big tree. Jink charges the man, who shouts that he should be killed. The enchanter cuts it cleanly with his sword. Gina walks away. The man collapses, bleeding heavily. Dan orders the remaining escaped prisoners to be captured. We must kill anyone who resists. Jink asks Ian to heal the man, and he rushes to him. Nina and Esther are asked to help. The young enchanter admits he was naive and did not imagine what a desperate person could do. If he had foreseen it, the big tree would not have been damaged. A man lies in a pool of his own blood. Meanwhile, Dan stands in front of two men who say they didn't know about the murder. Though they are out of custody, Dan tells them that if they want to avoid blame, they should help bring the others back up. He adds that these guys should not enter the maze and that they should take quests that avoid it, such as cheap work, disassembly, or cleaning. They said they had no money and thanked those who helped, as if for magical treatments and potions. Thanks to the men and the big tree, no one died. Leon says they can protect themselves because they're adventurers and adds they are relaxed right now. Dan says he wants everyone who was injured to return to the surface and testify. Leon replies they will help because he cannot forgive those outside prison and asks what they plan to do with the stake. Dan tells the people in the cage their sins have gotten worse and thinks about what sentence they will receive, knowing they stole information from him and that there will be consequences. Everyone departs. Zink uses the old tactic to make their movement easier. Bound Phoba trembles in his cage, appearing doomed. The whole squad meets the men and asks Mr. Desync how they got there. He says everything is fine and thanks them for asking. Be careful. People are exhausted. Those in cages shout that they are alive. Zink asked if the suspected participants have been released from custody. Dzink says they claimed ties to the Nads of our country. He adds there was a battle and some died. The man says enough witnesses remain. The squad leader smiles and says they will handle the prisoners and interrogate them, then asks Jinku whether he wants to tell the guild everything tomorrow. He agrees, and the children are told to rest because they are tired. Jinx said it had been a long battle, and they were exhausted as they entered the room. Happy Nina says sleeping in a bed feels much nicer after using a sleeping bag. Jinx says everyone is now afraid to be outside the prison, so the place they're in now is the safest and it costs 1,000,000 yen. Young says the government paid for their accommodation, so they can stay for a month. Jink says he does not mind. Frustrated, Esther says they didn't know they were going to be attacked, and tells Serum that remembering the truth is very uncomfortable, so the guys decide to sleep because they still have things to do. A bespectacled man greets Dzink and says he is in charge of the case, and that his name is Daniel Funko. Jink is surprised to learn this man was a chancellor, so he must be very important. The man gives a brief reply saying it's nice to meet you too, and Dan tells him to drop the formalities because Daniel is friendly. Stammering, the former chancellor tells Jing not to worry about anything. The tense Jink thinks Dan is too calm, even rude. Daniel Funk says they come from the same ducal family of Funk. Dan says that he is as the son of a concubine, he had no money for school, so he swung his sword in the field. Daniel says he learned management as a child, ran the house of Dan's parent, and was the link. Daniel says Dan was mischievous from birth, but the Falca family saw his talent and tried to make him a vassal, so he resisted and disappeared at 12 and later became an adventurer and Hamel and started a business. Daniel tells Dan he might be fired from the guild, so Dan offers to give up his position and rejoin them, because there are several posts he could take, but saying that the option is good is forbidden and would be of little use there, so he refuses. Daniel says he won't give up. Zink understands that Duke Fonka wants to start again. Dan and Daniel stop talking about them and speak to Jink. Daniel reports that all evidence proving the connection between out of custody and the Nazar country has been submitted to the court and asks what should be done with the participants. Jink replies that they can be eliminated so there is no possibility of revenge. Dan says that after torture and interrogation the clan's property was seized. He offers to sell everything and hand the money to the big tree. Daniel says they will then be formally sentenced in the stake court. Jink asks how Marquis Putinil is doing and whether he is still seeking information about them. Daniel does not have to worry because the Marquis has already been captured for planning to take the Jink servants hostage. He says that as soon as a few fingernails were torn off, he immediately revealed all the secrets of Rosalt and the other aristocrats, and Daniel says that, unlike when he was free, he did not know anything useful and his fate will be decided after his punishment. He adds that during Nadsar's long years of aggression, Dzink's abduction plan and Rosalto's espionage, the country went unnoticed, So King Cola decided to attack Nadsar and Rosalto, and Dan and Dzink are stunned. Dzing considers the attack. Daniel says it was staged, and that Muddles' body was sent to Rosalina. To win, they must use the stake's largest city, Hamel. He adds that they also urgently need a new guild leader. Dan will be removed from his post, so Mr. D's Incorporated is asked how he feels. Daniel approaches Jinku and apologizes for the delay. The man explains it was impossible to talk with Dan present. He adds he had already told him to go to Fonk's house, which is difficult for Dan. Although he does not show it yet, the reason is that he was expelled from the guild and lost his Rank A adventurer qualification. Daniel explains that if Dan does not get a similar post, his enemies could mock him, and he concludes that not only was Dan's information stolen, but many of Hamel's top people were affected. The man asks if something can be done about it. Dzing agrees, saying Dan is good, and there is no point in getting rid of him. The man says he has an idea. Daniel will listen to the idea. Zink announces he will form a clan. A man asks the enchantrant Surprise if he will create a clan, and Surprise says yes, explaining he will make Dan a lower-level member as a punishment. Dzink says they can ask His Majesty for an amnesty and also apply for reduced sentences, and Daniel says he understands and will sign the petition because naming them will make it more effective. While the young enchanter promises to tell the man the result in a few days, and the man agrees. A few days later, a disgruntled Dan approaches Jinku and says he is just an ordinary adventurer who would be happy to work for Mr. Jinku's clan. And Jinku cries out in alarm, asking him not to go that far. But Daniel laughs and explains that thanks to the petition, Dan pleaded guilty, was spared punishment, and was forced to join the clan for 5 years. Daniel notes the guild didn't want to let someone like Dan go either. He says that to limit the damage, he asked to be fired for personal reasons. Jink now realizes the guild needs a new leader. Mona appears and agrees, announcing that Kami will serve as interim head until a replacement is found. It turns out this girl is the wife of Alpha, a famous adventurer. Dan, expressionless, thanks Jink for doing so much for him, and the man notices that an embarrassed Dan doesn't look cute. The enchanter asks if there is anything he should do, and says the clan needs a name, and Dan agrees to help him with this. Jink asks that the maids be kept at the capital's level of skill and strength. They do not mind. The girls need someone to mend. He says if you give them enchanted items and take them to the slime dungeon, it will work out. Dan asks if this is where Jink got many magic stones, and agrees to help. This is how Dzink creates a clan. He decides to buy a mansion for sale in Hamel to use as a clan home, arranging a discount because the aristocrat selling the house was related to the person who got him out of prison. The mansion could be bought cheaply. Dan says resignedly he wanted a discount right away. He adds that he is running out of money because he is helping someone. Daniel says they still need to resolve the matter of release from custody. He asks Dzink and Dan to be present in court. The trial is underway. Although it is only an initial hearing, the outcome is clear. Dzink decides to promise to testify. During the search on the maze's tropical floor, the man says he accidentally overheard participants of out-of-prison plotting to kill him, then deliberately starts crying, and says he was afraid the more experienced adventurers wanted to kill him. At the trial, Killen, Dan, Daniel, Mina, Jan, and Esther are all embarrassed by Ajinka's over-the-top behavior. The court says all the suspects are ruthless. Because of years of attacks on the Cold Kingdom, it has decided on a sentence of 1,000 lashes regarding magic. People will be tattooed on their faces and hands to mark serious crimes, and the court rules they should be sentenced to lifelong hard labor as slaves. A guy. Everyone is happy, shouting that it serves them right. He reacts angrily. He prefers to suffer outside prison for the rest of his life. The young enchanter asks Dan who the person is. Dan answers that this is the master of the messenger class. Dink realizes it's Howard. Jink knows this man's greatest strength is the spear. Its attack range is larger than the Jinka swords. Even with magic, it would still lose. The man realizes the spearman is a formidable opponent like Esther, but Dzink says he will not fight him, so you don't need to worry. Howard calls out to Sake, explains that Tears outside confinement will be a snack, and remembers something. The man approaches the clan members and asks whether they have considered their behavior. saying he has already extracted all the information from them. Everyone sits looking guilty. Howard lays a hand on one contestant and apologizes for having to do it, adding that hurting others is unpleasant for him. The man says that if they pay him double this month, he will forgive them, and a clan member happily agrees and thanks Howard. Ding asks Dan if Howard came here on purpose. Dan replies that he did, and explains that Howard just wants to show his strength to others. Dan explains the messenger is in a strong position because of him, and no clan members complain about him. Dan says it's his turn and admits he was ashamed to be in the guild, so he spends his remaining days as head of the guild. The man asks the clan leader to accept him. Zink notes, these are not severe punishments, so they will not throw stones or garbage at him. I tell you that anyone who does this will be arrested by security. Dan says he understands and thanks Dizang. The dance punishment begins when someone is tied up in front of the guild for everyone to see, a common punishment for those who have lost the trust of the Adventurers Guild. Esther asks her brother if anything will happen. Dizink says it should not happen, but he is worried he will be. Howard is here, not in the maze. Rumor says he is taking in former members of Out of Prison, so Jin gave Dana a ring enchanted with wind magic. He thinks, with 3 involved, something is wrong. Esther turns to her brother. Former participants from Out of Prison came here. Howard recently punished them. It is unclear what they will do. People take something. They pulled weapons from their bags and drew them, and Esther and Zink are horrified. Tethered, Dan activates an air shield as all kinds of weapons fly toward him. Former members of Out of Prison shout that he is a coward for using magic because they say he must accept his punishment. Dizing addresses them and says that during the light punishment it is forbidden to throw anything at the offender. Jinx says the guild's rules mean he can't ignore such antics and that they break the rules and work against the guild. Mockingly, they apologize and ask if it's too much to expect someone to guess from the crowd, explaining that Howard fired them yesterday so they are no longer with Messenger, and now DZNK understands everything. He replies, this is a good thing, since it would cause problems for the clan, and he adds that he understands their anger. But if the organization does not know the rules, it raises doubts about its competence. They stand there not sure what to say. Dink remembers something. The guy says he heard the Messenger clan recently bought up all the broken weapons and asks if those were what they were throwing at Dan just now. Nervous. They said it was a broken weapon taken to be sold after leaving the clan. Jan suggests checking what Messenger members bought in stores. Jin agrees but says it's not them, so you don't need to check. He explains that, when scoring their skills, none of these weapons matched, but if the weapons had been theirs, they could have been fine. As the men leave, Jinx calls after them to take the trash. The man believes Dan has always been right, so he thinks he can take advantage of the situation. Meanwhile, in the Messenger planning house, a man is forced face first onto a table and beaten as Howard angrily shouts, demanding to know whether the man had any other plans. Yelling, he says he shamed him in front of Jink, that Fanka has stepped in, and that he won't be able to. He gathers his subordinates. One messenger reports that not only the enchanter, but also the Duke and the weapon shop will support him. He tells him that if the messenger intervenes, they will be in trouble, and Howard then has an idea. He decides to torture the Jinka for his own pleasure. At the Jinka clan house, Yong tells the enchanter he has news. He was banned from a city gun shop, and Zink is shocked. Ian says he went to ask about the messenger, but everyone was afraid and told him to leave. He thinks they were threatened. Dizing admits he thought Howard was stupid but was completely wrong, and he thinks they want to stop our weapons resupply and corner us. So Ian says if they cannot buy supplies, normally they can get weapons and provisions through his father's Chamber of Commerce. And Dizing agrees because there are many large merchants outside Hamel, and messengers cannot reach everything. Dizink says leaving things as they are is inconvenient, and asks if he can stop the messengers from moving. Jan suggests the enchanter ask Fonk for help. Grinning, Jink calls Jan a bad guy, and Jan jokes that he is far from being one. Jink, the girl who brought this to the TCs, and asks in horror about the black aura. 3 days later, people say the messengers were the masterminds. The streets are buzzing. Dazing asked Duke Faka to spread gossip mixed with the truth, and one man says they did it together. The clan was notorious from the start, and because of the embarrassing rumors, Howard cannot go into the city to gather people and is probably at home drinking. The gun shop is now run by Duke Fong's merchant, so the messengers are unlikely to pressure him. Maids made the tool using alchemical magic, and one of them says it's very interesting. The men decide to return to the city. Dzink says this was also Duke Funk's proposal, and that Duke Funk took part in the ceremony declaring war on the kingdom of Rosol. Dan asks whether he should go with him since he is a member of his clan. Dzinc repeats, "It is calm now, but the messengers might try to take revenge." He asks the man to stay in Gomal as a liaison and accompany the guild leader. They stand watching the city. Dan asks Jink if he is going to the world. The man says the country will surely want to borrow their power, and that the enchanter saved him and helped many people. Dan tells Jinku that despite this, he is still a child. In the royal capital, Jink sees many guards moving in military formation. A man enters the room and hears someone apologize for being called out right after the test, and Dzink says that's fine and adds he wanted to learn more about the world. He knows everyone in the room is high-ranking, so the conversation should be productive. The king announces a national reward for solving the clan's secrets beyond purgatory, notes Jink probably already received a guild award, and asks the young man to take a look while Dzing holds out a scroll, and the young man reads it with surprise because it says he can grant commoner status to his slaves Jan and Nina and can switch their slave contracts to subordinate contracts. Jinky understood this was expected of Duke Funk and did as the young man asked. The enchanter felt Ian and Nina had suffered enough and hoped to one day restore them to commoner status, so he decided to lift the subjugating magic when he returned. Jink thanked the king. The man wants to ask the same about Elsa and the East Sea, but Rosalta is unstable, so it's safer for them to remain slaves for now since that's how they are looked after. As for the situation, in neighboring countries, Rosal and Nazar, whose alliance has collapsed, start a war. Kal concentrates his forces in 2 cities on Rosalt's border, including Kartha. Once they declare war, they will be ready to attack. Attack reported. A river divides the border in the apartment. A report asks if everyone is safe. Daniel says they are heavily barricaded along the river and the Rosalt kingdom is watching and preparing for battle, so a major fight is unlikely. He adds the kingdom of Kal only accepts adventurers and children who escaped from Rosalt. Daniel says Nadzar will take over 1/3 of Rosalto's territory. He warns it is wrong to assume Nazar has the advantage because they have serious problems too. When asked what he means, the man explains Nazar's army was not ready for Rosalt's climate, and a plague hit their troops. Their potion use is higher than expected and no new supplies have arrived. Dzing says the gap between rich and poor is so large that some areas are completely unsanitary. The king calls this situation lucky for the stake. He reports gravely that Rosalt has already been defeated and that Nazar's army there is depleted by the plague. The king enthusiastically declares that an army from the country will march there and destroy them both at once. He says there is one problem and asks Jink to do him a favor. An explanation follows. They have prepared many potions and drinking water to fight the plague in Rosalta, but have run out of magic bags to carry them. Daniel says he wants him to mass-produce magic bags for that reason, and if the man agrees, they will buy them at a high price. DZNK says that is possible, but is surprised and points out that if they need magic bags to carry potions, there is no need to bring water because it can be made with water magic. The Enchanger says even ordinary soldiers have enough mana to do that. The king says they need not carry water in their bags, but in battle the mana reserve is crucial, so even a small amount of mana can save a soldier's life. He adds he will not oppose accessories that let you create water. Desync agrees but will impose a condition. The king asks again. The young man says only adventurers and merchants from the Maze City really want accessories, and this country does not have a monopoly on them, so the enchanter insists that once the war ends, the country will sell half of his output to the people. The king accepts the promise and says he will take responsibility and see it done. Jink thanks him. Daniel suggests ending the conversation about the invasion of Rosol and shifts the topic to the present. He reports a family of necromancers is burning fiercely. The Bernhard family has a long, distinguished history and is closely tied to the Nazar family. She is feared as the kingdom's trump card. About 100 members of the Bernhard family have necromancy powers, so they have as many children as possible and raise only those with necromancy talent. Daniel says they currently have 8 combat-ready necromancers, a number you can reduce. The king notes that their army cannot ignore the death toll. Fighting necromancers is hard while any corpses remain, rotten bodies or skeletons. They can control those corpses as if they were alive, and the corpses do not use mana. Dazing realizes the only options are to burn or crush the pipes or kill the necromancer, but each corpse will be replaced by another, so they will have to fight a powerful corpse again. Daniel says that if they wait a while, the necromancer might run out of mana. The king asks Jink what he thinks about this. The man replies, he planned to avoid a direct encounter with the Bernhards by briefly frightening their soldiers with fire and wind magic, proposing to burn their supplies and launch sudden night raids to destroy food and equipment. Daniel says a bit of wear and tear should seriously weaken the Nazar army's morale. The king agrees it is realistic and says it should be added to their strategy. Apologizing, the king asks Jank at D's Inc. to start making accessories immediately. Exhausted after making over 1,000 pieces, the man stretches. His name is... Nina reports Alexander from Tears of the Dragon has arrived. They are all coming together. Gina thinks about how the dragon's tears seem to have been working in the royal capital ever since they arrived. Alex Greed makes a quick move, noticing he has grown a little taller. The enchanter asks what happened. Alex says he heard Jink is forming a clan and asks the man to take... He expresses gratitude for the past. Jink is pleased at the idea of increasing participants and says Alex and the others would be welcome. However, the man warns that people trying to exploit it might contact them. Yinquans wants to make a magical contract with them, and Alex says he doesn't object since that's natural given their situation. Jink asks whether Alex knows people from the Sacred Flame. Alex says he gets along with them, and the enchanter assumes they will take part in the war against Rosalto. Alex says they will explore Hamel's labyrinth and that he does not care about Rosal. But since this is his homeland, he does not want to fight. Jink thinks the Adventure Guild is gathering mercenaries right now, which makes things hard for Alex. The man says it is still better to go to Maze City a little later. The Enchanted replies they are in the midst of a battle with a large messenger clan and that Alex may be drawn in if he goes. He asks if this is true, and Jink says yes. Zink's tool from his workshop is delivered to Duke Fonk every day at a low price. Zink also sells it cheaply, and the gun shop is now flourishing. Messenger cannot compete with him, and they will have to admit it soon. D-Zink explains the clan's payment will be below the market rate and offers to sort the paperwork tomorrow. Alex gladly agrees and thanks the young man again. A few days later at Cole Castle, where the execution will take place, reports say people tried to kidnap the enchanter, Lord Jink, who had settled in their land, and others illegally invaded their territory. Some say Rosalto's actions are unforgivable. The king declares that the invasion by spies from the Nazir kingdoms posing as released prisoners is a crime. The man groans, and the king says that the king, tied to a stake, he falls silent. The man is beheaded. The kingdom's leader ends the statement by declaring war on Nazar and Rosal. Thus, the war caused by the D-Zank begins. The 3 Gordos bordering Rosalt were invaded immediately. Commander Colabrando, who led Rosalt's army and guarded the enchanter, surrendered quickly, and Count Brato fully captured the city of Cordo. At Brando's mansion, Chris greets Jink is surprised, asks how he is doing. 2 identical men stand in front of Jink. One is named Roy Hughes and the other Lewis Hughes. Roy greets Jink, and Lewis says he hasn't seen him since they were at school. They are twin brothers from the Hughes Knight family and classmates in the Magi department. Dean asks if they suffered any special harm from the Marquis. They answer yes, but the young man says he is fine. The brothers say that thanks to Jinka's advice to His Majesty, they secured protection. The enchanter asks why they have come. Lewis says he will use the war to think about his future career and to serve with honor, and adds that he and Chris plan to join the Count's army. Chris asks Jink if he wants to hear about his father's army and about Karth. The charmer replies that he does, and says he wants to ask the man one question, but for now tells him to continue. Chris begins by saying his father has seized the weapons and property of Rosalt's people and that the nobles and dignitaries will be publicly executed as soon as they are caught. The young man says ordinary citizens were enslaved by the Kola aristocracy, who planned to leave after the occupation. One brother adds that despite this, the children will go to school and return to commoner status when they grow up. Jink replies that if they keep everyone as slaves for life, their productivity will drop. He says that once the war ends, they will march to Ruta, the kingdom's capital, with the army of the people's aristocracy, and after capturing the capital they plan to destroy the soldiers of Rosalt and Nazar. Chris realizes he will take part in this sweep. He says he only feels like he's on the front lines when he can make a difference. Soldiers fighting on the front lines must be annoyed. Jink replies that it can't be helped, tells Chris he is the heir, and asks what the Enchanger wanted. Standing before DZINK, Esther asks about the battlefield. D-Sync explains that after Esther becomes a commoner, she will join the Count's army alongside Chris. The Enchanter asks his brother to join the fight against Nazar. The boy stands crying. Jinky tells Esther not to cry and asks if the boy dislikes it. The maid beside him says the master has offended Esther and calls him a villain, and the man is terrified. Esther wipes her tears and tells her brother what is stopping him. If he tells him to give up his life, he will do so. Jink asks in horror what he is talking about. The end. The Chander tells his brother he wants him to start succeeding in the military as soon as possible, and notes that whatever path Esther chooses, this career will benefit him in the future. Jing asks to send his brother to the relatively safe Arya Grad, asks Esther to take Ian along as a security guard, and adds he will support them with enchanted items. Easteat now understands and thanks his brother. Jink watches his brother and realizes he truly wants to go, but thinks the king will not allow it. The Enchanter says he can handle it himself. Esther asks Jinka to leave John here for John's safety. Jinka considers it and asks about Dan, who wanted to fight Nazar to get out of prison. Esther agrees. Daniel vows to fight so his brother will not be ashamed. Zink adds Alex and the others as members, officially forming a clan. Zink names its seal and registers the clan as an A-rank adventurer guild. Many say Daniel did a great job. In Hamel, at the Duke of Foncourt's house, 3 men are discussing something. One of them says they should exploit a public debate outside prison to destroy aristocratic political enemies, and he starts talking about becoming Lord of the Maze City. Another asks what they should do because they are getting too much attention. The third man complains that the child's height is unbearable. He says he will use the child's weakness to engineer the child's downfall, but it must look like an accident. He angrily catches up with the other man. Someone asks how long they will be kept waiting since no one has arrived. He says he understands that's disrespectful. Someone forces the door open. Howard Watt. Foxen, furious, demands to know where Funker is, and the men react in horror, asking what he is doing and begging to be taken out of here. He says unfortunately no one will come to help. Howard orders a man to say where Funker is and threatens to kill him if he hides the information, and the messenger adds that Howard will do it even if the man does not hide it. These Inc. reacts in surprise when he realizes Funker's house was attacked by a messenger, and a man standing in front of him says there is no need to worry because my lord was not injured and is currently in the royal capital, planning to meet his majesty at the royal palace tomorrow. The man hands him a paper and says it contains the full information. Deasing looks. The letter said the arms dealer the messenger had been holding back finally called out to Duke Fonker. Members of the Messenger Guild began gathering in the city. Howard tried schemes to exploit the messenger and the Duke, but they failed, and the desperate messenger attacked the mansion to force the Duke to stay silent. Informants among the nobles and merchants the Duke had taken in leaked the messenger's plan. The messenger fled home just before the raid. Jink says he's glad everything is fine, and that if the mansion is empty, the messenger can't do anything. The man tells him not to worry. He says he had earlier invited the side branches of the family who disagree with his master, and they were found dead. The man says the messengers were put on the wanted list and will be sent to Hamel the day after tomorrow. DZNK realizes Duke Falker is a terrifying man. Realizing he had probably expected the messenger to attack sooner or later, he used them to remove the family's side branches that opposed him and did everything through other people's hands. He knows it is impossible for that person to be his enemy. The man asks Jinka if it is convenient for him to come to the royal palace tomorrow, because the master wants it, The young man agrees and asks to convey greetings to the Duke's bottle breaks. Howard did it, and onlookers stand around him in horror. His head is full of thoughts about Funker setting him up. It looks like they've been stripped of their adventure status, and at this rate, only hell awaits them. Questions flash through his mind about running away because he can't stay in this country. He wonders where the rest of the story is. Details are unknown. Howard tells the boys to get ready and informs them they are going to the Yamato Kingdom. Others react in horror and warn they could be caught at the border. Howard explains the Hamel Maze connects to the Yamato Maze on the 67th floor. The Yamato Kingdom borders Call but looks distinct, with a culture that resembles old Japan where people wear traditional Japanese clothing and live in wooden buildings. One of Howard's men admits he did not know the maze was connected to Yamato. Howard replies that Yamato is an ally of Cole, but they say they do not like stowaways there. He says the maze is hard to get through, but if they break through it, they can escape. Everyone rushes off, calling it a good idea and urging you to hurry and buy some food and equipment. Howard knows he didn't want to share this kind of information, but he can't die right now. Inside the maze, Chris, Lewis, and Roy stand while Dan and Elsa praise them for doing a good job and cleaning everything up. Jinx thanks Dan for supporting the maids. Dan says that with so many people, the slime room is only a small problem. Deezing shouts that the guys have gotten stronger but not enough, and a week before departure, he says he will train them to the limit. They enthusiastically agree. This may be a level-based game follows Chris, Lewis, and Roy as they head to the battlefield. At the Adventurers Guild in Hamel, Dan tells them they are finally leaving tomorrow, and Jink confirms it and asks them to keep an eye on Eskis. The guild leader asks whether Jinx has decided to join the Messenger's destruction team. Jinx agrees, says he is partly to blame for the confusion with the Messenger, and wants to take revenge on himself. The girl says he can call her Alpha. At present, Herbert and several messengers have fled into the maze, and the rest are being arrested and questioned. Dan tells them Herbert disappeared while they slept, and that even an S-ranked venture can get through the maze, so he must have abandoned them as unnecessary weight. And Mona says she agrees to help the adventurers. Howard is now on about the 16th to 30th floor. Jink notices Howard is closer than he expected. Alpha says no, it's moving fast and its exact location can't be known because observers can easily return. Mona says that so far there have been no reports of the Messenger's group killing bystanders inside the maze. This may be because the group's hierarchy is still shallow and many eyes are watching. Adventurers who go deeper must be careful. The boys decide to label the captured messengers and slaves as criminals and hand them over to Duke Fonker's family as slave soldiers. Duh says he will pay cash to compensate for the trouble from their confiscated property. D-Zink replies that everything is fine. Now the guy offers to break up. Alpha looks thoughtful and slightly frustrated. Jink calls. Miss Mona asks him what happened. I was already wondering why Alf looked so sullen. She explains that Dan has been busy lately and they have been spending far less time together. She adds they will be apart for a while because he leaves for the battlefield tomorrow. Jink accepts this as entirely his fault. The enchanter feels he owes Dan for supporting the maids and protecting acting Esther. Jink chases the Alpha and calls to her. The Alpha stops. Someone asks what happened. The young man says he told him about Dan and admits he regrets sending him there because he acted selfishly. Jink says Dan is part of his clan and that he'll go to the battlefield to support him. The girl replies calmly that the young man does not need to apologize. Jink points to the box and says it's for Alpha. They ask, surprised, what it is. The young man says it is what Esther took from her parents' house. Esther opens the box and immediately closes it, looking shocked. Zink asks how she feels. Alpha thanks him and says he will use it tonight. Saying goodbye to his friends, Dizink tells Esther to be careful and says if it gets hard, he can come back home at any time. The Enchanger wishes Chris, Lewis, and Roy good luck, and Esther, showing a fighting spirit, vows to do great things worthy of his brother's name. Then Dan hits Dizink on the head and, defending himself, says he only tried to save the couple from a crisis. He angrily asks why the young man gave his wife an aphrodisiac and complains he did not sleep enough and his back hurts. The man calls this unnecessary help, and Esther anxiously asks Dan what he is doing with his brother. It's fine. Chris waves to the enchanter and tells him they are coming. Jink says they will. Grim says he will hunt down the messengers and asks if the subjugation team is meeting here. Ian replies they should arrive soon. Jink hears Grim's words. She turns, sees people and a fairy, introduces herself as Ryu Kanon, presents the messenger's extermination team of Dietrich, Benjamin, Joseph, and Sylphid, and says it's nice to meet you. Jink replies that he is glad to meet you and thinks. He admits he's never seen a fairy before, and despite how cute she is, her status is ridiculous. The fairy says it will now follow the messengers into the maze, and there are 2 routes. I am told I'll ask Mr. One to choose. Hannon tells them they can go either way, but one route is very dangerous, so she wants Jinka's consent, and he says he understands and asks for an explanation of the route. The fairy says there is another entrance to the maze. Because it is dangerous, people are usually forbidden to go near it, and it is sealed in the dungeon basement. A large hole leads down to the 15th floor. For this special occasion, the seal has been lifted and they will use it as a shortcut. Jink asks Ian if he knew about this. Ian says this is the first time he's heard of it. Kanoni tells the others that only a few people, including senior management, are privy to this information. She says going down from the 1st floor is safe, but will take time and money. She asks Jinka which option is best. Jinka watches Howard getting lower and lower. The enchanter considers taking a shortcut to catch up. Jinka decides the shortcut is too dangerous and cannot take Nina with him. Jinka asks Ian whether they can. Ian replies they will be able to make the right decision as soon as they try. The enchanter knows now is not the time to hesitate and will manage. The young man offers to take a shortcut. The fairy agrees and says if Jinku feels he can't handle it, they will come back. They set out to find the messenger. They stand by the hole that leads to the 15th floor and tell you not to worry because the squad keeps a close watch on the rope. Dazing knows the drop is deadly, and a fall would be fatal. I told her that the maze's space is warped and there are not really 15 floors. She asks the enchanter whether he wants to stop. He says he does not want to, and will do everything he can. As he descends, Jink is horrified by how frightening it is. Howard should wait for him. Everyone came down and Jink says they somehow got here, the fairy tells him. It is a good job, explains there is an invisible ceiling on the 15th floor and asks him to be careful, and the enchanter says he can't believe it's a straight line. As expected, the S ranks show no fear, but Joseph says they only hide it. Keenan says she heard some savages use an Orkelcom kunai to climb down and are very good at it without wings, and Dzink says that sounds like a compliment from her. The York boss room is on the 15th floor, and the team stays focused, quickly understands the situation and moves forward. Everyone now moves to the 21st floor of the pasture. Jan asks Jinka to look at some. Noticing 2 men, he asks if they were following the messenger and offers to catch you. Approach them and get information. The guys are hiding, and Desync notes they seem seriously injured. The enchanter realizes that if the report points to ordinary robberies or murder, the young man assumes they attacked the Fonker house, and the fairy explains that fatigue and pain make them less vigilant. The guys run to the messengers. Turning around in horror, they scream. The battle starts. They grab these. Sylph asks Dietrich not to be so cruel to the men because they need to get information. Eddie K asks the messengers what they're doing here and where Howard is. They answer rudely, claiming they know nothing. Jink notices they smell bad and wonders what happened. The fairy asks you to give it to her. It creates imperial slime, leaving Jink and Ian stunned. A messenger shouts to be freed while the Nucus climbs onto his hand. The hand blisters. Cannon gently tells the man that if he does not speak frankly, his right hand will turn to bone, and if that happens, he will not be able to fix it with his own money. Jink realizes she really is a little devil. The messenger begs. It needs to stop, and it looks like it's going to tell us where Howard is. He says he is in the volcanic zone on the 46th floor now. Dan wonders if Howard is already there. The fairy warns the deserts and volcanoes on the 40s and 50s floors are harsh, and a poisonous zone ahead will be hard to pass. Jink now understands why May's exploration stopped at the 60th floor. The enchanter asks the messengers why they are here. They say they asked the city to increase the rice rations. He is the only one who eats meat every day. The man says he then killed half of them. Dzink is sad to learn Howard is truly a bad person. One messenger says he left them there when they decided to turn back, and a magic pocket was sewn into the back of his clothes. He says he had many potions and they only managed to get here because of them, but he ran out. Jink sees a magic pocket on the man's clothes. The man shakes his clothes and a book falls out of his pocket. The enchanter opens the book and reads about money paid for threats, that is, blackmail. Canon explains this is a secret book and assumes it contains all the messenger's schemes and bribes. The man denies it and says these are his personal notes and should not be confused with anything. Zink realizes this is an accounting book. Now he has a good souvenir for Duke Funker. Tell the men to wait here for a while. Join the rest of the squad, hand them over, and continue the pursuit. The messengers exchange glances. One of them asks the other what will happen to them. Jake. Think warns that for all they've done they will become criminal slaves and be handed over to Duke Funker, and he asks whether they know that Kola started the war. The enchanter tells the men they will bear the brunt of the battle as slave soldiers, fighting to the death, and at best they will be forced into hard labor. The fairy says that until the squad arrives, she will entertain them and let them play with the slime. Those who are horrified cry that it is not necessary. At the same time, Howard is on the 46th floor. Seated, he greedily devours a huge amount of food. The messengers regard him with indifference and mild annoyance. Howard leaves only the chicken's bones and then reports that Howard has had enough. One of his men tells him they will soon run out of food, so he asks again. He explains they can't contact anyone right now and have no supply team. One messenger watches with annoyance and thinks Howard should eat less. The messenger says he can't do anything about it. It's a little dangerous, but they will hunt for a subspecies of the acrobatics. People ask whether they were on the 30th floor. Howard says yes, and that it's hard to tell them apart from the ones on that floor. He explains the cubs drop magic stones, and that the boss will likely drop a lot of meat. He says it will take 7 days to get through the volcano, and they won't starve. Tired people look at him as he threatens to ask if it's a good idea. Howard shouts that they must move forward and can't turn back anymore, adding that no matter what they do, they will get to you. Motto. He says they are messengers, the strongest, sent to lift morale. People agree. Howard turns around. He knows the pace drops sharply after the 40th floor. Sand and volcanoes are difficult environments, and the kill command is affected the same way. Howard thinks about Jink joining the extermination team, and the journey that would take ordinary adventurers dozens of days but that he can complete in a few days, thanks to the enchantment. The man thinks taking a shortcut down to the 15th floor will bring him very close. Once Jink and the boys left the previous area, they resumed tracking at full speed and focused entirely on catching Howard. The group ends up on a floor full of volcanoes. Traces of a campfire catch their attention. Jan says there was a camp here, and Jink suggests messengers left it, though other travelers may have been here. He picks up a stick from the fire and says it's still a little warm. The fairy reports cheerfully that after the desolate area she has hardly seen any other adventures, so this belongs to the messengers. Jinky agrees and says we need to take a breather. Dietrich says he's glad D-Zink joined them because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to get here. The Sliff cheerfully points out they can even take a bath, and exploring the maze now seems to mean something completely different. Kinan asks everyone to concentrate. She says there are more than messengers here. There are also powerful acrockets that are very annoying. One messenger, surprised this is the boss layer, speaks up. Howard says if they take it seriously, they'll do something about it. The messenger asks the man what he might be. Howard replies that he wants to make him angry and to destroy it immediately. Howard quickly explains that the acro-canitor is much stronger, and unlike the original, even spits fireballs. The man orders everyone to use everything when he gives the signal. He urges an all-out attack to break it. Then someone calls Howard's name. This man is a jerk who orders me to raise my hands above my head. Howard says he didn't expect him to catch up with them, adding that it was stupid of the young in-chain. Howard shouts that Zink will die here and says he will feed the young man to the lizards. The man commands the messengers to attack Zink and the others. Canon advises you to complete all tasks as quickly as you can. A battle is underway. Zink runs toward Howard. He shouts that the boy must die. Jink decides it's best to take out the mages first. Suddenly, the man's expression changes. Howard resists and battles the enchanter. Fight Jink believes his spear skill makes him strong, so he relies on it to stop a counterattack, and he knows that if he retreats, magicians will attack him. Zink unleashes an aerial tornado. Howard is confused and shocked, while Kenyon shouts to Jinku that he will cover him. She says they will remove the remaining participants from the messenger. It's faster to knit them if they don't have much time. Climb members run toward Howard. He groans and asks the man to put magic into the boss ball, but the man objects in horror that this is ridiculous in this situation. Howard angrily orders him to do it and threatens to kill him. The frightened messenger says he will not obey the tyrant. Howard grabs him roughly. He throws the clothes into the hole and tells them to die. On screen, Jink and Keenan react in shock and say Howard has abandoned his friend. The boss of this floor suddenly crawls out of the hole with a messenger in his mouth and then grows larger. Moans and screams of horror rise when they realize it's the boss. A satisfied Howard tells them it's a small gift and asks whether Jink will keep catching him. Ian is horrified to realize he has woken up. Howard yells for his men to leave. The man runs away, shouting that he hopes they will never see each other again. Jink and Cannon follow as the enchanted yells for him to stop. The young man struggles to fend off the boss, and the fairy says in horror that it eats people. Jink calls Jan, who tells him he captured most of the messengers, though a few managed to escape. The enchanter decides to catch up with Hal. He suggests the cannon split up, explains he will go after Howard, and asks Fairy and Ian to deal with the boss. Agreeing, she says she will come to help as soon as she understands. Jink leaves, and Cannon calls after him to be careful. The messengers ask to be released. Someone grabs one of them by his clothes. Dietrich warns that if they do not want to be eaten, they must stay quiet. The man says they can handle the boss. The fairy about to fight says she has not used her wind magic fully in a long time. Charging at the boss, she yells that she'll cut him up. Fairy tells Dietrich to cover up. A man rushes in to help and pins the monster down. Dietrich knows that even with amplification magic, it's still difficult. The man angrily cuts off the boss's tail. The men are fighting a monster. The messengers sit tied up. One person admires them, while another says they are unlikely to escape. One of the clan members turns around and sees the pause. Several more monsters surrounded the messengers. The Silt came to the rescue and, after killing a monster, said they were vile and annoying. He says Howard wanted to make sure he could get away with it, so Howard had a friend wake the boss. The man tells the messengers they are worthless to Howard. During a boss fight, Ian uses an air/once in the love upon. The monster screams and Jan and Dietrich look on in surprise. Another monster appears. The man realizes it is even bigger. A fireball shoots from the monster's mouth. It's flying straight toward the guys, Jen. Then call Joseph. The cannon says they are at a disadvantage near the lava, so they should fall back and lure the monster out. The guys leave and the monsters follow them. Jan heals Joseph and Benjamin, warns that if you don't separate the two monsters, they will win. The fairy tells you to attack the weaker one, luring it and pulling it away. They move toward you. The team decides to counterattack and carries it out. Howard runs off. He says Jink is still following him and he feels short of breath after running so much. Howard orders the messengers to stop him, but they fail. Dzink easily handles he cuts open one of their arms. He picks it up and tosses it aside. The enchanter tells him he is the only one left, while a disgruntled Howard looks on. Zink accuses him of using his men like tools and discarding them to protect himself, and the young man says he is not speaking from a sense of justice, that he cannot forgive someone like Howard Jink, and with anger in his eyes, tells him he reminds him of his boss, while Howard stands in disbelief and says he is a man. The enchanter uses the orb, and Howard finishes by saying he does not understand why the enchanter is saying this. The man asks Zink where he is aiming. A white flash appears. Blinded, Howard sees that Steve, the team, arrives and looks for Jinky, and the man taps one spot, exclaiming, "The young man should be there, but he is not visible," and Jink stands behind him saying it's all over. The enchanted employs a water cyclone. Someone falls forward. Kainian arrives and apologizes for being late. Jink notices that they seem to have made it. The fairy points at a frozen slide that looks like a person and asks what it is. The young man explains that, using earth magic, he immobilized Howard. With the last of his strength, Howard tells Zink that everyone will be killed. The fairy creates imperial slime, and Howard is now lying in it. Decay starts in his hands, his whole body. The process is still underway as the man screams in pain and Jink and Kinnan watch. The young man asks whether the fairy intends to kill him. She says no. She says she will soak him in slime so he cannot fight, on ads saying he will melt Howard's skin and then leave him defenseless. DZNK remembers. She is a little devil, and the young man says the rest of the golems should be locked in his prison. The fairy asks again and says it's a good name. Jink knows it's all sorted out. He wonders whether Esther and Dan have reached Rosalt, but they are already at Brando's army headquarters. On the territory of Rosal in Harlot's, the army's commander-in-chief greets his son, and Chris replies that they have not seen each other for a long time and vows that as heir he will fight so his father will not be ashamed. He greets the Hughes brothers and says he has heard a lot about Dan. Chris's father tells Esther he heard about Dan from Jink, and that Dan rose from being a commoner in the royal capital to an A-rank adventurer. Esther responds positively. The commander announces they are occupying and building a fortress here in Harlot's, and will now attack Sarihild. He reports that Nazar's army has arrived and the battle will be tough. Esther sees Rosalto's army steadily losing ground. Chris's father explains that Cole's army has seized Rue, the kingdom's capital, and is sweeping through, and it's only a matter of time before the kingdom falls, since this fight is really a war against the Nazar people in Rosalto. The commander asks his son if Jinky has trained him in the maze. The son answers yes, and adds he can now use attacking magic. The Hughes brothers say that on the way here they hunted monsters and trained their bodies. The commander-in-chief tells the men that this will be the first battle for Chris and the others, and says he has some advice to give them. Chris's father says, it's war. He tells them not to see the enemy soldiers as human. The man explains that the enemy is not a monster who cannot understand words, but a person with family and friends. And on the battlefield, the main task is to kill as many opponents as possible. He says that no matter how well-trained a soldier is, he still hesitates for a moment when he kills an opponent, and those who cannot set aside conscience and empathy will eventually become mentally ill. Chris's father reminds them that if they feel mentally exhausted, it's better to go back. Deasing agrees and thanks him for his concern. Esther believes there will be a battle tomorrow and needs to practice. Suddenly, the boy hears that Dan is a veteran. Two men say the Hughes brothers are very talented and will draw a lot of attention. The second says, Master Chris has grown stronger, and the Brando family will be safe in the next generation. And the first asks who Esther is, says the Count only took him because he is a junior Jinka with S rank, notes he is as fragile as a girl, and doubts Esther can even fight. The boy hears the other man say he thinks Esther is actually a girl. Dan steps into the conversation, asking what the young people are saying about Esther. He is nervous and at a loss for words. One of the men forces out that they'll go. Esther apologizes to Dan, who asks why the boy didn't say anything. The boy replies that in his position there was nothing he could do. Esther adds that he has been used to it since he was in Rosalta. Many people in Rosalt despised Jink and Esther, so Jink had a bad reputation even in Brando's army camp. He escaped to Call just before the country was destroyed, so it is natural he was hated. Dan tells Esther he is now stronger than the adults around him and asks if he can put those who say stupid things in their place. Esther says that is fine, because she does not want to create problems or damage her brother's reputation. Dan says that will not work, so if Esther does not like it, he will do it himself, and the boy replies that he does not have to go that way. It's that far. A man asks what's wrong. Esther says if Brando's soldiers see him fight on the battlefield, they'll learn more about him. Dan says he understands and will speak with Count Brando. The man apologizes for the late visit, but the Count says Esther and Dan arrived on time because he needs to talk with them too. He says he is thinking of asking Esther to join the knights under his direct supervision to achieve results in battle. Esther asks whether the Count wants him to become a knight. He replies that he has received several letters from DZINK describing the boy's actions and abilities. Esther thinks about her brother. The Count says he thought it would be a good idea to make him platoon leader, but the soldiers will not be convinced even if Esther holds a rank, and he asks what the boy thinks. The Graf assumes this is a relatively safe way to win. Dan says the Count cannot ignore that the soldiers are speaking ill of Esther, agrees that those who go too far are punished, but that doing so only draws more attention, and adds that sending more punishers will harm the soldiers' morale. Esther apologizes for any inconvenience this may cause. He says she doesn't need to apologize, that it's due to his poor managerial skills, and he apologizes for being an unreliable adult. The boy asks the Count to listen to him. The Count says it depends on the content, but he will not ignore it. Esther urges the Count to let him fight on the front lines in tomorrow's battle. The Count replies that this is expected, but then offers a reason against doing it. Esther explains that if he could see his spear in action on the front line, he could solve all the problems. The Count objects, saying that if the boy dies, DZNK will hate the Count for the rest of his life. Dan will cover for him, explaining that intelligence reports show no known savages in Nazar's camp and saying this is the best course. The Count thinks about it. Finally, he agrees and asks them to step back if they sense danger. Dan and Esther are happy. They think about the Count and leave. A few days before Esther joins the army, Rosalt's slave soldiers go into battle. Gordon Nonland is one of them. He thinks about how it is. It has been 6 months since he became a slave soldier. Brief, flickering thoughts warn that the city is about to fall. With such a poor spear, his fate will not change. He wonders whether his Esther son is struggling right now. Rumors say he went to the stake with D. Zink. Gordon Nonland wonders why the boy wanted to become a slave. He understands that Gina is unlikely to treat Esther badly. They had been on good terms until things changed suddenly. A Nasser soldier appears and orders Rosalt's common soldiers to kneel before Nazar. Soldiers stand in shock, wondering how many he killed at once. The commander orders the soldiers and slaves to kill a Nazar soldier. Suddenly he calls Gordon's name. Claiming he was skilled with spears, he orders him to beat him. He agrees, though it's clear he doesn't even know how to retreat. With such equipment, winning is impossible. The soldier from Nazar looks around frantically and calls the next man forward. He pictures the unit destroyed, much like his life has been so far. Gordon realizes it was a very empty life because he lived as his father's puppet. His father had killed his wife, and in the end he became a slave. The man is angry because he believes his son chose Dzink over him, and he is unlikely to accept it. Gordon thinks forgive him, and wants to apologize if they meet in another world, while a Nasar soldier yells that they are cowards who cannot fight without borrowing a magician's power. The commander shouts for the soldiers not to be fooled, and says they will purge Nazar's army of corruption and bribery. He orders the 3rd and 5th squads to climb the wall with their mithril spears. They do. Esther calls Dan and tells him to go. Suddenly they notice the archers. As she uses an air shield, Dan says he needs to take care of it. The boy agrees. You should be directed to use magic to destroy the enemy. The boys climb the wall. Esther uses an air cyclone this time. The boy climbs onto the roof. He orders the archers to attack. Esther can deal with them easily. The boy uses an air shield, and Dan praises him but asks him to let Dan handle it too. He says angrily that because of the people from Nazar he tasted bitterness. People from Rosalt are surprised by what Esther is doing. One of them says they will continue in the same spirit of a glory. The rooftop battle continues. The soldiers charge forward, cheering that they have broken through. Dan says the wall is clear and asks Esther if he is okay. He replies that he used recovery magic and has no serious injuries. Dan asks the tired soldiers who had been judging Esther if they saw what the boy can do, and one answers yes. One responds positively, apologizing for being so stupid, and the second says that thanks to them they do not lose as many people. Dan calms down a little. He understands Esther will be less depressed now and reports they are heading to the city for reinforcements. In the city, he asks once more if the boy is okay. The boy says yes. A battle is underway in the city center. After killing soldiers from Nazar, Esther feels sad that he and the bank have split up and must wait in a small city square. The boy notices something and runs, curious about what is out there. Esther arrived at the spot. Shouts call for the monster to stay away. He can't be here. It goes to where the sound came from, and he sees a man with an arrow in his throat and in his back, holding a spear stuck in a soldier, and Esther realizes that this is his father. He thinks about Nazar's trump card, necromancy. It's far easier to use dead bodies that don't get tired or feel pain than to make someone lift an arm. He blames me, but says there's more to it. Esther believes the horror of moving corpses destroys the will to fight. It is worse when one of these corpses is a relative. Esther can't believe she and her father are reunited like this. The man says the boy's name, asks his father if he is conscious, and looks surprised. Gordon apologizes for being an unworthy father and for not leaving a legacy. A walking skeleton appears holding its own skull, calls Esther his grandson, and says they have finally met. The boy recognizes his grandfather, a noble army general. Esther believes, as her brother said, that Nasser collected the bodies of those executed. Gordon asks his son if there is anything he can do. He warns that a monster possessing someone can harm them before the soul moves on. Grandpa adds that a blade possessed by a monster has almost no will. He adds that the boy's father is already dead, but killing continues, and soon the boy will give his soul to the monster. The boy is from an aristocratic family and must find the elder's strength. The son, Esther, must lead the country. The boy says he still hasn't forgiven him for what he did, and won't forgive him even if he dies. Esther adds that he is grateful for the support. The boy kills his father. Gordon burns down. Esther goes on to kill her grandfather. He says no matter what the boy does, he carries their blood in him. The boy realizes the two bodies were moving. This proves there is a necromancer nearby. Esther decides to use the presence detection power his brother gave him. Nazar's army commander is angry because 2 people were killed while others were not. A fight breaks out and he says they are useless. Esther suddenly appears and attacks them with an air cyclone, sending the soldiers flying. On the way, Rosol's army decides to finish them off. Nazar's army necromancer is angry that this child destroyed his forces. It collapses. Esther thrusts a spear through his throat. Solemnly, the boy tells the others that the enemy necromancer has been keyed. Hilt Yunka places his hands over the bottle to show his thanks and says he does not know if he will like it. At the clan house, Luke gratefully accepts the gift and says it is a 50-year-old wine from the Olga region. And the giver replies that he is very happy Luke has become his rival in the rank advancement exam. Jink tells Luke he is very strong, admitting that during the exam he felt his life was in danger. Luke says he just returned from the maze and apologizes for dragging Jinky into this. He replies that even if he tries to find a rival, there are no more rank adventurers left in Hamel. Luke reports the Gamel control team has been eliminated and all rank adventurers have entered the maze. He says everyone is grateful to the team for defeating 2 evil clans, which has strengthened the country's security, and that they are now the strongest in Hamel, with only the Jinka clan able to compete. With them, Luke suggests that the young man make an agreement with the big tree, and says he has no intention of fighting. Collusion and monopoly on profit are excluded. Luke explains that dozens of big tree volunteers are involved in the war, and he wants to keep his footing so he can provide support in case something happens. Jing says he does not mind and offers to sign the contract at the guild later. The group decides to hold an event to improve communication between the clans. A few days later, news comes that the Golo's army has captured the royal capital. The decision to execute the king and his entourage is made quickly and through the magic tool. Reflection: Jink observes the situation in the Calapolis. King Rosalto kept insulting his son until his son was thrown into a boiling cauldron and died. I think he felt nothing when he saw his real father die, and the kingdom of Rosalto was destroyed. Lloyd, Jink says he feels a weight has been lifted from his shoulders. He realizes his only concern now is his comrades on the battlefield. Jink hopes they are all right. Duke Funker approaches Dzink and says he was here. He says he's deeply worried about Rosalt, but now Call can finally reach the sea he dreamed of. Dzink understands the true goal wasn't a retaliatory war. The country called Sea Call is large, but because it lies inland on the continent, it depends on importing goods like salt and water. They rely on Yamato to meet their needs, but if they seize the coastal kingdom of Rosalt, they can trade with distant countries and fight naval wars, which will further increase their power. After the war, First Princess Nage-Do will become the new ruler of Rosalt, and she served as an army commander during the fighting. Dzink only asked for the small plot of land where the Rosalt labyrinth sits. Duke Fonker says he could ask for more, but the young man refuses. You ask what he will do now, and he says he will look for new talents. Nina, who saw the fairy, says she is very nice. Yinka is asked who it is, and the fairy introduces herself. Marina says she looks forward to working with them. The enchanter says he will invite this girl to join their group because she has a talent for magic, especially summoning. Yang and Jink bought 12 slaves to serve as servants and maids, and to guard the mansion because opening the clan increased the number of staff needed. The enchanter leaves training the maids to Elsa. He also offers her official citizenship as a commoner. She announces this, thanks to Zink, and says she will continue to serve him. Marina asks if E needs to be caged. Jink says she can move around freely. Nina reacts to the mention of a cage, and the young man explains the fairy was once in someone else's possession. Family kept in a bird cage by her master. She faced immediate violence whenever anything happened, and most likely, when he was in a better place, he was in a bad mood. He did not feed Marina. Dzink explains this, refers to a deposed aristocrat linked to purgatory. Nina asks the fairy where her mom and dad are. The fairy says they died when Nina was little. The girl asks Marina if she can read and write. The fairy says no. Nina takes her in her arms, tears in her eyes, promising to be there to feed her delicious cookies and teach her everything. Jink says, let Marina spend the day with Nina and relax. Then they will start teaching her magic. Jan will take care of the boys. Jink asks to buy drinks and some food for the big tree event. The young man suddenly freezes. He has a premonition about something.